click the bell icon to turn on notifications.
Did you know that Microsoft Office is so much more than just Excel, PowerPoint, and Word? In this training video, we've combined some of our very best tutorials on the other Microsoft 365 apps to help you improve your productivity in Microsoft. Specifically, you'll learn Microsoft To Do, Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Planner, Microsoft OneDrive, Power Automate, and Microsoft SharePoint. And if that isn't enough, you can get 4 free courses from Simon Says It from the link in the description below. Enjoy the training.
Hi guys, and welcome to this video tutorial on how to use Microsoft To Do to create and organize lists. Now, I've always been a big list maker. For some reason, I get a crazy amount of satisfaction from starting my day with a bunch of incomplete tasks and crossing them off one by one. And as a lover of all things stationery, getting me to switch from my trusty paper notebook to a digital to-do list was a process that took me quite a while. But I've now been using Microsoft To Do for about 3 years. And looking back, I think I would struggle to go back to a handwritten list. I find it super convenient to be able to create my to-do lists when I'm working in Outlook at my desktop, or if I'm on the go using the mobile app. And in fact, I think I probably use the mobile app more than anything else, as it's always there with me in my pocket. And the thing I love about it is just being able to keep track of everything I need to do and also have a record of what's been completed. So in this video, I'm going to take you through how to get started with Microsoft To Do if you've never used it before. Now, as with everything in Microsoft, there are numerous different ways to access Microsoft To Do, but you will need to have a Microsoft 365 account. Now, one of the ways you can access it is you can work from a browser by jumping to todo.microsoft.com. You can then sign in using your credentials and start working with Microsoft To Do online within Microsoft 365. Alternatively, you'll also see on this page that you can download the Microsoft To Do app to your phone, and it's available for Android, Windows Phone, and also iOS. So this might be something that you want to do from your phone. If you just jump into the App Store, for example, search for To Do, and you should be able to download it that way. Now, what I'm going to use for this demonstration is I'm actually going to use the desktop version of To Do. So I'm using Windows 10, and if I jump down to my Start menu at the bottom and type in To Do, you can see that one of the apps that I have installed is Microsoft To Do. So let's jump into here and see what it's all about. Now, depending on how you've accessed Microsoft To Do, you may be prompted to import lists from Wunderlist. Now, if you're not aware, Wunderlist is another very popular list-making application, but if you decided that you want to make the switch to Microsoft To Do, it does make it very simple to import existing lists. Now, I don't get that when I log into mine, but I have seen it pop up, particularly in the online version. So if that's something you want to do, then you can import your Wunderlists. Now, the first thing we need to understand when working in To Do is what kind of lists can we manage? And what you'll see is that on the left-hand side, I have a main menu that's divided down into 2 parts. In the top part, we have the different ways that we can organize our information. And in the lower half, I have my lists. So let's start with the top half of this menu. The first option we have here is called My Day. And this is where you can add tasks to your day so you can see exactly what needs to be done today. We then have Important, and this is going to show any tasks that you've flagged as important. We have a Planned section. So this is where any tasks that have a due date set in the future, this is where they'll live. We then have an Assigned to You area, so any tasks that have been assigned specifically to you are going to show in here. And finally, we just have an area where we can essentially create unassigned tasks. Now, when I say unassigned tasks, what I mean are tasks that don't belong to a list. And we'll talk about this more a little bit later on. Now in the lower half of this menu, this is where I have all of my different lists. And I've created all of these. You can see I have my shared lists. I have some tasks underneath work lists. And then I have a group called clients, which contains client A and any tasks I have for that client, and then client B and tasks for that client too. Now, the way that you decide to create your tasks is entirely up to you. Some people prefer to just jump into tasks and start adding new tasks at the bottom of the screen here. Now, remember I said that when you add them this way, the tasks are essentially just going to be sitting here as unassigned. Now, the way that I prefer to do it is I like to create a list first and then create my task from within the list. It just means that I'm not constantly having to come back to unassigned tasks and move to new lists that I've created. So let's start out by creating a new list. I'm going to go over to the menu on the left-hand side and right at the bottom click on the New List link. I can now add a name for my list, so let's call this Design Ideas. Click away and I now have a Design Ideas list. While I'm here, I'm going to create another one and I'm going to call this Client C and click away to set that. Now it's worth noting that with any of these lists that you create, if you right click over the top of any of them, you're going to get a contextual menu pop up, so you can do things like rename your list. You can share this list with other people. You can move the list to a different group. You can print the list. You can pin it to your Start menu in Windows 10. You can duplicate the list, and you can also delete the list. So I'm going to make sure that I'm clicked on Client C. I'm going to right click and I'm actually going to move this list to my clients group. Now, if I want to reorder these, so you can see that Client C is at the top of the list and I actually want it underneath Client B, I can just click and drag and drop to reorganize those lists. Now you'll also notice that next to my lists, I've injected a little bit of fun by adding an icon to represent that list. Now I will say that if you're using the desktop version like I am or the online version, you don't have the option to add these little icons. The way that I did this was that I opened the To-Do app on my mobile phone and then I just added an emoji when I was naming my lists. So that's a little bit of a tip there if you want to liven up what your lists look like. So now that I have a couple of new lists, I might want to start adding some tasks. So I'm going to click on Client C, and right at the bottom here, if I click on Add Task, I can then type in my task name. Once I've named it, hit the Enter key, and that is now listed as a task for this particular client. If I want to edit the details of this task, I can click on it and it's going to let me view the task details in a pane on the right-hand side. So let's go through the type of information that we can add into each of our tasks. Now at the top here, I get a choice of adding different steps. So this is kind of like adding a mini task list for a task. So maybe I have to take some steps or do some things prior to this call with Sally Smith. So what I could say here is I could add a step. I might want to prep my notes ahead of the meeting. I might want to get feedback. From other team members. And I might want to book a meeting room. So these in themselves are kind of like mini tasks that make up the general overall task. Now you don't have to add those in, but it is quite a useful little feature to keep you on track. Now, if this meeting was occurring today, I could choose to add this to my day. And as I said, over in the left-hand pane, the first option that we have here is My Day, which is going to show any tasks that you need to do on that particular day. I can set a reminder, so I'm going to say tomorrow. I can add something like a due date. Let's set that to tomorrow as well. And then I can select if this is a task that's going to repeat. So if you have maybe something that occurs weekly, daily, monthly, you can choose a recurrence option in here. You can then select if you want to assign this task to yourself or somebody else. And you can also do things like attach any additional information as a file and add some additional notes. Once you've added all of these details, you can click the arrow at the bottom to just dismiss that detail view. So very simple to create a task within a list. Now let's for the moment jump back to our unassigned tasks list. So I've added in 3 unassigned tasks. And the way that I did that was just by clicking Add Task at the bottom to add them into here. So now maybe I want to assign these unassigned tasks to a particular list. So this one at the bottom here is related to client C. So all I need to do is click, drag, and drop it onto client C to move that task across. I'm going to move this phone call to client B, and then I'm going to move this task to client A. And I would always advise that you do this with unassigned tasks just to keep them organized. Now, if you have any tasks that are of particular importance and you really want to highlight those and make them stand out, maybe they're tasks that you're going to deal with first, you'll see if you hover over any task, you have a little star icon on the right-hand side. If I click it, it's going to mark this task as important, and I can now see that under the important area on the left-hand side. So in general, when I'm managing my tasks, anything that I need to deal with right away, I'll mark them as important, so I just have a big long list of all of the things that I need to deal with first. Now, one thing that you also might notice here is that for each of these different areas, I have different background colors. So this important area is kind of a pinky color. If I jump across to planned, that's more of a teal color. Assigned to you is green, tasks is blue, so on and so forth. Now, of course, you can change these background colors. If you click on the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner, you have different themes that you can apply. So I could choose to add a solid color, or I could add a picture background. I also have some sorting options up here as well. So if my lists start to get particularly long, I can sort them by due date, ones that have been added to my day. I can sort the tasks alphabetically or by when they were created. Now, how you choose to organize your tasks is entirely up to you. As I mentioned, some people like to add all of their tasks due today to my day so that they can see everything that needs to be done before they leave the office. Other people prefer to add tasks to lists and switch between those lists. And my advice really to you would be to use To Do for a while and then just see what works best for you. Now, we've seen how we can move and manage tasks within lists, but let's now take a look at how we can organize our lists. So I've got quite a few lists going on here, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I also have one group. So my group here is called clients, and then underneath that I have all of my lists related to my different clients. And creating a group is super simple. We have a little icon just here, and when we hover over, it says create a new group. So I'm going to call this group meetings and hit enter. And I can now assign different lists to this particular group. And once again, it's just a case of dragging and dropping. So let's move design ideas to the meetings group. I'm going to click, drag, and drop. And I've now organized that list underneath the group of meetings. And I could go through and add new lists and assign to the relevant groups. Now, these groups are collapsible and expandable, so that's really going to help if you start to have quite a lot of groups that contain different lists. You can just expand the ones that's relevant at that particular time. Now, task lists can be shared with other people, but you need to be aware that there are some limitations. So lists can only be shared within an organization or between personal Microsoft accounts. But let me show you how you can share a list with someone else. So the first thing you need to do is click on the list that you want to share. So I'm going to click on client B because Adam also works with client B, so I want to share this task list with him. Now, to do that is a simple process of going up to my icon in the top right-hand corner where it says sharing options. What I can then do is send an invite to Adam via an email, or alternatively, I can click copy link. The link to this list will get copied to the clipboard, and I can then open up an Outlook email and paste it in and send it to him. Or alternatively, I could post it in something like a Teams channel or a private chat conversation with him. And of course, if anybody shares a list with you, you're going to find that underneath My Shared Lists. Now, earlier on in this video, I briefly mentioned assigning tasks. So this is another way of essentially sharing a task with somebody else. So if I click on the Client A list just here, I might see this task at the bottom, follow up on email from Michael Thompson. Now, I might think to myself, actually, Adam's got a really great relationship with Michael Thompson, so this task might be better for him to complete. So what I can do is click on the task to open it up, click on Assign To, and then you can choose a member of your list to assign this task to. So in order for you to see other people listed up here, you need to have sent them a link to this list and they need to have accepted that in order for you to be able to select them. So I'm still waiting for Adam to accept the invitation to this list. So I'm going to assign this task to myself for the time being. And you can see as soon as you assign a task, it's going to say who it's assigned to. So in this case, assigned to me. And I'll also then find that task under the Assigned to You section in the left-hand menu. So that is it. That is a very quick overview of how to use the main features in Microsoft To Do. Hopefully that's enough to get you started and excited about organizing tasks and to-do items. That's it for this video. I will see you in the next tutorial. Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial video on Microsoft Forms. Now, Microsoft Forms is probably the best small application that you've never heard about. It's often overshadowed by its flashier cousins in the Microsoft 365 suite, and it's easy to forget that Forms even exists. So what I plan to do in this tutorial is to give Forms some much deserved love and find out what it can do for us. Now, it's worth noting that Forms is available to everyone that has a Microsoft 365 account. So this includes those subscribed to the business plans, the enterprise plans, so E1, E3 and E5, and even those who just have a personal Microsoft account. And basically at its core, Forms is an application to collate feedback. It allows you to create shareable surveys, polls and quizzes in minutes, and it also allows you to track responses and provides real-time results and analytics for your survey. Now, one thing I'd like to point out here is that recently Microsoft has released an advanced version called Microsoft Forms Pro. And this version allows you to integrate with your company branding, set up workflow automations, and also integrates with Dynamics 365. Now, I'm not going to be covering any of those features in this tutorial. We're just going to cover the basic Microsoft Forms that you get when you open up 365. And that seems like a good place to start as much as any. You can see on the screen, I am logged into my Microsoft 365 account. So jump onto office.com, log in with your credentials, and then from the dashboard, where you can see all of your applications listed down the side, click on All Apps at the bottom, and you should find in here you have a link to Forms. So let's click to jump into it. Now, if this is the first time that you're using Forms, then you're going to find that your homepage is going to be reasonably sparse. So this new area is where you come to create a new form, a new quiz, or select a template. And if you want to see the full range of templates, you do have a More Templates button over on the right hand side. If you click that, it's going to give you a few more options. You'll also see just underneath there, I have a recent forms list, and you can see that I created a summer party survey a couple of days ago. So if I wanted to load that up, make changes, maybe reuse it, I could do that from here. But we're not going to do that. We are going to create a brand new form. And just above, we have the option to do just that. So let's click it and jump into our new form. So the first thing I need to do here is give my form a name. So let's call this Christmas Party. I can add a description if I want to. I'm not going to at this stage, just to save a bit of time. And what I could also do is insert an image just to add a bit of interest to this form. So let's just type in Christmas Party and see what we get. This is doing a Bing image search. So I'm just going to click on this one here and click on Add, just so you can see how this image is used. Once I've done that, I'm basically straight into creating the questions that I want to appear on my form. So right underneath we have an Add New button. Let's click it and see what we get. Now what you'll see is that you have a choice of different question styles. And there are actually 7 of them, even though you can only see 4 listed on here. If you click the drop down, it opens up 3 more hiding in this little menu. So let's go through each of them. So the first one here is choice. And the choice option lets you add multiple choice questions with as many answers as you wish to include. You can also choose if the respondent can provide multiple answers and if a question is mandatory. So let's type in a question. I can now start adding in different options that I want them to be able to choose between. Now by default I only have 2 options. If I want to add a couple more, I've got an add option underneath, so I can add in a 3rd choice. And let's add in 1 more choice. And if you want to have an option that just says other, you can add an other option right at the bottom. I can then specify if I want them to be able to select multiple answers by toggling on this little setting, and also if this question is mandatory. Now I'm going to leave both of those toggled off, and then I'm going to click Add New. So now I'm straight into adding my 2nd question on my form. And this time I'm going to choose text. Now the text option allows respondents to answer your question with a free text response, and they can basically type anything into this field. So let's type in our question. And that is basically it. Now with all of these questions you can also add an image, so if you want to maybe illustrate your question a little bit more, you have the option to insert media at the end of each question. And this one they're just going to be able to type in. Now if I feel that the answer to this question is going to require a particularly long response, I can choose to toggle on long answer, which gives them a little bit more room to type. Let's click Add New and check out the 3rd question type that we have here, which is rating. So this allows you to ask a question and then the respondent can select a rating. And you can have a star rating or you can have a number rating. Now I'm going to stick with star. And I can also choose how many stars I actually want. So maybe I want them to rate 1 to 10. I could add 10 stars. And once again, I can choose if this question is required or mandatory, or if it isn't. Let's add new again and take a look at the date question type. So this is for date responses. So an obvious question here would be, and that is pretty much it. So the respondent's answer is going to be in the form of a calendar selection. Now one thing that's worth remembering is that at any point you can preview what your form is going to look like when you send it out by clicking the preview button at the top. So if I click preview, this is what it's going to look like. So I could select dog and bear pub, I could type in my text answer, I can rate the organisation skills, and you'll see if I click here I can choose a calendar date. Once you finish previewing, click on back to go back to editing your form. Let's add another question, and this time we're going to go into that drop down and take a look at ranking. Now this is useful if you want respondents to be able to rank answers in a specific order. Let's add our answers. And what you'll notice is that if we preview this particular question, what it allows people to do is basically click and drag these answers into a specific order. And you can see as I hover over, I've got these arrows which allows me to move different options down, or I can drag and drop and put these in the order that I would prefer. Let's go back and add in another question. We're going to dive into that menu and we're going to add a Likert question. Now we're probably all used to seeing these types of questions. I know that I've filled them out on many different forms. This is where you have various different statements and then you can rank them on a scale. So a question I might have in here would be, how would you rate last year's version? And then I can have different statements. So maybe I want them to rate based on the food, based on the bar, the parking, and the staff. And then I can enter in a scale. So I might have poor, okay, good, very good, and excellent. And that is what that question looks like. Let's preview and scroll down, and you can see here they can go in and select whichever options they want. So that is your Likert question. Let's click on back and scroll down, add another new question, and this is the final question type that you have, and that is Net Promoter Score. And again, I'm sure we've all seen these on forms previously, or even on websites when we've filled out different surveys. This is where you have a ranking from 0 to 10. Let's type our question. And that is pretty much it. So those are all the different types of questions that you can have when you're putting together a survey in Microsoft Forms. Now, aside from adding these questions, there are several kind of general options that you have for each of the questions. So if I click on this first one, you'll see at the top of every question, we have 4 little icons. So this first icon here allows you to copy this question. So if I click this, you can see now I have a copy. I can go in, I can change the question and even change the responses if I want to. The next option along is delete, so I can delete this question out, and then I can also choose the order of the questions by reorganizing these. So if I want to move this question down and make it question number 2, I can use those arrows to do that. And you'll see these consistently across the top of each of your questions. Now, once you have all of your questions in your form, you might want to change the theme so it looks a bit more in keeping with the actual survey. In the top right hand corner, we have a themes menu where we have a number of different ideas, things that you can apply, or you can choose just a solid background fill. So I could have just a purple or a green, or I could go for something a little bit more exciting by choosing one of these predefined themes. You can even use one of your own images. So if you have a particular image of your team that you want to add, you can upload an image from down here. And that can be an image that you've got stored locally or in a OneDrive cloud storage folder. Now, once you've set up your form and you've got it looking exactly as you want it to look, you're going to want to send this out so that people can complete it and you can start collating that feedback. So in the top right hand corner, you have a big old send button. So let's click that. And then you have some different ways that you can send this form. Now, the first thing Forms will do is it will create a shareable link for you. So if you want to paste this link to this form into an email and send it out that way, that's absolutely fine. Or maybe you want to paste it into something like Microsoft Teams so that people can just click and they're automatically linked to this form. If you do want to do that, just click in this field to select the shareable link, click on copy, and then just paste that into your relevant emailing application. We also have some other options. So if we click this one, recipients can basically scan the QR code onto their phone in order to access this form. You can see the embed code. So if you want to embed this form into an HTML web page or maybe something like a sway, there is the code that you need to copy. And then finally, you have the option to email directly from Outlook, and that's going to open up an Outlook email for you with a link to the form. You could also share this as a template so that it can be reused by others with just some of the information changed. So I've sent this form out to a group of people, and what you'll see is that when people start responding, in the response tab at the top, you'll start to get this little notification. So I can see that one person has responded. If I click on this tab, I can see their responses. And I basically get a little overview of how that person has responded. And obviously, the more people that complete this, the more accurate this is going to be. So this gives me a really nice little analytics area where I can go in and really find out what it is that people want. I even have an option here to open this up in Excel if I want to do further analytics on this data. Now, the final thing that I want to highlight to you when it comes to creating forms is the settings that you can adjust. Now, there aren't many of them in Microsoft Forms, but you will find them just underneath these ellipses, the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but a couple I might point out here. You can see that I am choosing to accept all the responses, which is correct. I can choose to shuffle the questions around. Maybe I want to be notified via email every time somebody responds. And I could even create a customized thank you message. And if I click that, I can then maybe choose to put something down here like, so make sure you come in here and take a look at those different settings. And the only other one that I would highlight in here is printing your form. So if you want to print this out, you have a print option just here. So that is how you create a survey or a form in Microsoft Forms. Fairly straightforward. Let's jump back to our Forms homepage. So now that I've created that form, you can see it listed under Recent. If this is something that I utilize all the time, it might be that I want to add this to my pinned list, which means it will now appear under pinned and it will stay there no matter how many different forms I create. So it just makes it super simple to access. Now the other option I have in here is to create a new quiz. And I'm just going to call this Deb's quiz. Again, I can enter a description, click on Add New, and I pretty much have the same choices. So quizzes are very similar to surveys in that way. And that is pretty much it. It is a reasonably straightforward little application, but if creating surveys to collate feedback is something that you do reasonably frequently, it is nice to have an application built into the Office suite that you can just jump to super quickly from your Microsoft 365 dashboard. And everything, of course, is integrated with the other Microsoft applications. I hope you found that useful. That's the end of this tutorial. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone, and welcome to Getting Started in Microsoft Planner. Now this is part one of a two-part video series we're doing on Planner because it has a lot of functionality that we weren't able to pack into just one video without making it extremely long. Now before we get started to jump into this demonstration, let me explain to you exactly what Planner is if you've never used it before. So Microsoft Planner is a planning app that offers you a visual way to manage and track progress on projects or on other work that you might have. And Planner is available to anyone with a paid subscription to Microsoft 365. And that might be a personal plan that you've paid for yourself, or possibly a business or enterprise plan that's been paid for by your company. And much like the other Microsoft 365 apps, Planner is available on the web and also as a mobile app. So you can really keep up to date with what you're doing when you're on the go. Now, when we jump into Planner, the first thing you'll notice is it has this kind of card interface. So if you've ever used an application such as Trello, it's quite similar in style to that. And Planner really serves as a hub where your team members can create business or project plans and organize tasks. So let's dive in and take a look around. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do if you haven't done it already is download and log into Planner. Now, Planner can be accessed a few different ways. You can go to the Planner website, which is the page that I'm actually on now, and you can sign in with your Microsoft 365 account credentials to access it. Alternatively, you can just jump straight to your Microsoft 365 portal, and if you click on the App Launcher and expand all of your apps, you should find that under here somewhere, there it is, we have Planner. So I'm going to click to jump into it that way. And as I mentioned, Planner is also available on mobile devices for both Android and iOS. So if you want to have it on your phone, then just jump across to the App Store and download it. Now, when you first go into Planner, you'll be directed to your Planner Hub. And if you cast your eyes over to the left-hand side of the screen, you can see Planner Hub is what I currently have highlighted. Now, for me, what this is showing are all of the recent plans that I've created. I can show all of the plans that I've created, and it will also show any plans that I've marked as favorites up here. Now, currently, I don't have any because we're going to do that in a moment. So what this Planner Hub essentially shows are all of the plans that you've created yourself or plans that have been added by other people. And it's worth noting at this point that if you are using Planner with a personal Microsoft 365 subscription, you'll only be able to see plans you've created for yourself in the Planner Hub. Now, I keep mentioning this magic word plan, so let's dive in and create a plan. So this is pretty straightforward. We're going to go over to our left-hand menu, and the first icon that we have there, the plus, is New Plan. As you would expect, I need to give my new plan a name, and I'm going to call this Simon Says It. I can choose to add this plan to an existing Microsoft 365 group if I have one. I don't, so I'm going to skip over this option, because what I want to do here is set my privacy settings for this particular plan. And the two options I have are public, which means that anyone in my organization can see the contents of any plans that I create, or I can set my privacy to private. So that means only members that I add can see my plan contents. And if I click this options drop down, that just allows me to add in a description for this plan if I want to. Now I'm actually going to create a private plan. So I select my option, click on Create Plan. And what you'll see is over in the left-hand pane, it's now added Simon Says It as a plan under Recent Plans. And if I jump back to the Planner Hub, you'll also see it there listed at the top of Recent Plans and also underneath All Plans. So I'm going to click to jump back into it. Now, when you create a plan, you're going to be looking at the board first of all. So this is essentially where you can add all of your tasks and organize and manage them. And you can see here currently I have a bucket, and a bucket is just another name for a group, called To Do. And this one is created by Planner whenever you create a new plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few tasks into this to-do list. And you can see my cursor is flashing in Enter a Task Name. So let's just say Create Reference Guide. I can choose to set a due date on this task. So let's say that this needs to be done by next Monday. And if I want to, I can choose to assign this task to somebody else. Now, currently the task is unassigned. And the only option I'm getting is to assign the task to myself. Now that's because when I created this plan, I set the privacy settings to private. So currently I'm the only member who has access to this plan. So what I'm going to do for the time being is I'm going to leave that to unassigned because I actually do want to assign this to another member of my team. So I'm going to click away and select Add Task. And there we go. It's now moved underneath. And something that might confuse you first of all is that it actually leaves the Add Task panel open so that it's super quick for you just to go in and add multiple tasks. So let's add another one. I'm going to say we've got a webinar coming up. I'm going to set a due date of next Wednesday, and I'm actually doing this one, so I'm going to assign it to myself. And click away to add that task. And click on Add Task. And of course, I can carry on going. Now, as I just mentioned, I'm the only member of this plan, so it might be time to add some other people, let them in on the fun, which means I can then assign tasks to them. So in the top right-hand corner, I have a members drop-down. And what I can do is enter a name to add a member. So I'm going to add Ben Smith. And I'm also going to add Adam Lacey. So now that all three of these are members of my team, if I want to assign a task to them, I can click the three dots in the corner of the task, click Assign, and then choose who I want to assign this task to. So I'm going to assign this to Adam, like so. Now, currently, looking at these tasks, they don't really contain a great deal of detail other than the title of the task and possibly a due date. So what I might want to do is jump into the task and add a little bit more information. So let's jump into this webinar task. Let's click on it, and it's going to allow me to add some more detail. So at the top here, I can see who this task is assigned to. So currently, that is myself. I can choose to add a label. So essentially I can color code my tasks. So this is kind of similar to categories in Outlook. It's just a visual way of being able to immediately see what tasks belong to which category. And of course you can go through and rename all of these so that they're not just the generic color names. So I'm going to click the pencil to edit this one, and let's call this one Meetings. I'm going to edit this one and call it Project A. This one's going to be Webinars. And then I'm going to go through and rename the rest of these Project B, C, and D, like so. So I'm going to add a label just to color code this and categorize it. And I'm going to add the label Webinars simply by clicking on it. Now you can add more than one label to a task, but I'm going to leave it there for the time being. Next, underneath, I can choose what bucket this task is assigned to. Now, we haven't spoken much about buckets yet, but currently the only bucket that I have, the only group, is the to-do bucket. And you'll see if I click the drop down, I have nothing else to select. Now, when we start adding buckets in, you will start to see this list grow, and you can choose which bucket you want to assign your task to. So we're going to come back to this a little bit later. I can choose the current progress of this task. So this is a webinar that takes place next week, so I'm just going to leave this on not started. The priority for this is pretty low, so let's change that. And then I can choose the start date. So this webinar is happening on Wednesday the 10th of November, and it's also due on Wednesday the 10th of November. I can type in some notes for this particular task, and if I want to show those notes on the task card, I can click this little option here, Show on Card, which means that if you look just behind, it now shows those notes on the card in the actual plan. And then finally, right at the bottom here, I can add some checklist items. So maybe there are some mini tasks or preliminary tasks that I need to do prior to this task commencing. So when I'm running a webinar, in general, I'll have to prep my notes. I'm going to add that in as a checklist item. I usually test the webinar software. That's something else I need to do. And I also need to book a meeting room so I can do this webinar somewhere silent. And these themselves act like little mini checklist items. Now it might be that instead of showing the planner notes on the card, I want to show these checklist items instead. So I could say Show on Card, and I can now see those on the card behind. Now unfortunately you can't have both, it's either one or the other, and you'll see that they toggle off and toggle on. Now finally at the bottom I can add any additional material via an attachment, so that might be something like a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation. And then finally at the bottom I can type in any further comments I have about this task. So I'm pretty happy with that level of detail. I'm going to close this window and my task is now a lot more meaningful to look at. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've added a few more tasks into my list. And I've added quite a lot of detail to these tasks, so you can see that I've assigned this task, create OneNote training video, to two of us, both Ben and myself are going to be working on that. This one is marked as important and it's currently in progress. And then this task just here, the Project B catch-up meeting, that's been tagged with two labels, both meetings and Project B. It's an urgent task. I have a due date and all three of us are going to be working on that meeting. Now currently I have all of these tasks contained within the to-do bucket. And as I mentioned earlier, you can create your own buckets and assign tasks to those buckets. So it's really just a way of organizing all of your tasks into more manageable lists. If you just carried on adding tasks in this way, you'd end up with an extremely long to-do list, which makes it difficult to see all the different tasks. So I'm going to add a couple of new buckets. So let's click Add New Bucket. And this bucket I'm going to call Clients. And hit enter. And let's add one more bucket. This one is going to be Meetings. And maybe I want a third bucket that just says Done. And now what I can do is I can add tasks directly for these specific buckets, or I can move existing tasks to these buckets. So for example, this one here is a meeting about Project B. I'm going to pick up the card, drag and drop it underneath the Meetings bucket to move it. This one is Project C, so that's related to a client, so that's going to go under there. Project D is also a client, so let's put that just there. And I'm going to leave webinars in my to-do bucket. So very quickly, I've been able to organize and manage these tasks. Now it's also worth noting that when it comes to buckets, whilst you can add your own custom buckets, as I've done there, Planner also contains some preset buckets that you can group by. So again, right up in the top corner, you can see currently it's set to Group by Bucket. If I click that drop down, I could choose to Group by Assigned To. And that's going to arrange those cards in a slightly different way. So you can see all of the team members at the top, and it's showing which tasks are assigned to those particular team members. I could group them by the progress. So I currently have 2 tasks that have not started, 2 in progress, and none that are completed. I can organize by due date, which can be quite useful, labels, and then finally priority. And if I want to go back to my original layout, I just group by bucket again. So this is really useful, and I use these interchangeably to switch between different ways of viewing my tasks. Another useful option in this same area is the filter option. So if I click this drop down, I can choose to filter my tasks by specific pieces of criteria. So if I want to see all of the tasks that are due next week, I can select that. I can expand priority and select all of the tasks that are urgent. Now I can see that currently I have none, so I'm going to change that to no date. So if I remove my date filter, it's now showing me that I have one task that is marked as urgent. I'm going to remove that urgent filter, and let's say I want to see all of the tasks that are in progress and that are assigned to the clients bucket. And that is pretty much what I already have there. Now if I've made a lot of selections in this filter and I just want to clear them all, I can click the clear button at the top to pull everything back. So some really useful options in this menu at the top. And the final thing I want to mention in part 1 of this video is that any tasks that have been assigned to you, if you click on My Tasks in that left-hand menu, you're going to see all of those tasks, and at the moment I've got them grouped into progress buckets. And once again, if I wanted to change that, I can click the drop down and maybe group them by priority or possibly even due date. So that's it for part 1 of this video. In part 2, we're going to be picking up where we left off, and I'm going to show you how you can do things like complete tasks, how you can organize your plans, how you can see high-level analysis of all of your plan activity using charts and schedules, and finally how you can connect to other Microsoft 365 applications. So that's it for now, and I look forward to you joining me in part 2. Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of Getting Started with Microsoft Planner. So we're picking up where our last video left off. And if you recall, we created ourselves a new plan called Simon Says It. And if you recall, we added some basic tasks to our plan. We then added additional information into those tasks. We assigned them to different team members, added labels, and also organized them into customized buckets. So we're going to pick up from this point, and I'm going to start out by showing you how you complete a task. So once a task is finished, you're going to want to change its status to completed. So let's look at this webinars task that I currently have in my to-do bucket. I'm going to click on the task to open up the information page. And all we need to do here is we're just going to change this progress drop-down to say that the task has been completed. Now, as soon as I do that, you'll see that it gets a green tick. The word webinar now has a strike through. And if I close this down, you'll see that it's now been removed from my to-do bucket, but I can still view it underneath this show completed. So if I want to expand this, it's going to show me all of the completed tasks for this particular bucket. So they don't completely delete, you still have access to see them. And I find this is sometimes helpful if I'm trying to make a list of everything that I've accomplished in that week for my weekly team meeting. Now, an even quicker way of completing a task is by clicking in the circle next to the task name. So let's go to our next task along, Create OneNote training video. If both Ben and myself have completed this, all I need to do is click in the circle. That's going to mark it as complete. It's going to remove it from my bucket. And once again, I can click the drop down arrow underneath just to show that completed task. Now, once I do start completing tasks, I then might want to reorganize the way that I'm viewing these tasks so that I can see in a big long list all of the ones that are completed. So if I jump up to Group by Bucket and change it to Progress, I can now see the tasks that are not started, the ones that are in progress, and then the ones that are completed. Now, after you've been using Planner for a while, you'll probably find that you have many plans. So this area just here, particularly underneath all plans, starts to get a little bit chaotic. So it's really useful to be able to organize your plans and possibly mark the ones that you use most often as favorites. And you'll see just above, we have a little section here for favorite plans. So maybe out of all of the plans that I'm a member of, I only really interacted 2 of them. So they might be the 2 that I use most often. So to make them super simple for me to access, as opposed to having to scroll through a huge long list of different plans, what I can do is favorite them. So I'm going to hover my mouse over Simon Says It, and you can see I get the little star icon, which I can click, and that's going to add that plan into my favorites. I'm going to go down to the Train IT Now plan, and I can do this a slightly different way. I can click on the 3 dots on the card, and from here I can select Add to Favorites. And what you'll notice is that when I add these plans, the card is showing some useful statistics about the activity that's been occurring in these plans. So on a quick glance, I can see that we have 1 task not started, 1 in progress, 0 that are running late, and 2 that are completed. Now, something else that you can do from this Planner Hub is, again, if we click the 3 dots on the Simon Says It plan, I obviously can remove it from favorites, but I can also copy the plan. So if I want to quickly create a new plan, which basically has all the same settings as the Simon Says It plan, so that might include all of the tasks and all of the members, I can say copy plan. I can rename it. Now I'm just going to leave it as copy of Simon Says It so I can easily identify it. And I can select a group to copy it to. So I'm going to select the plan, Simon Says It. Now it's going to copy across things like tasks and members, but I also have some additional things that I can include. So I'm going to include the description, any checklist items, and also the labels, but I could choose to include dates and priorities as well. Let's select copy plan. And I will say that the times that I've done this, it can sometimes take a few seconds for it to actually work as it copies across all of those settings. But there we go, I can see that it's been successful. And now if I look under all plans or even recent plans, there is my copy of Simon Says It. And if I click on it and jump in, you'll see that everything is pretty much the same. I have all of the tasks and all of the same members. So that's a nice quick way just to copy all of the settings of a specific plan across to a new plan. Now the final thing I want to show you in here, again, if we click on the 3 dots, I can also copy the link to a plan. And you can see as I've done that, it says link copied to clipboard. So if I want to invite somebody to this plan, instead of adding them as a member from within the plan, I could just choose to copy the link, paste it into an email or maybe something like a Teams conversation, send that out to them, and then they can join the plan that way. Now I'm going to jump into my Simon Says It plan again, because so far in this training video, we've been working predominantly in the board area. And of course, because the board is what shows all of our task cards. But we do have a couple of other options up here, so let's jump in and explore those. So if I click on charts, this is going to show me something very similar to what we can see on that card when we add it to favorites. So this basically gives me a high-level overview of all of the plan activity. So I can see how the tasks are broken down by status, bucket, priority, and also member. So this is just really some at-a-glance statistics. And if I jump across to schedule view, this will open up a calendar, and it's basically going to show me in this calendar format the tasks where I've assigned things like due dates. Now, the final thing that I want to show you in Microsoft Planner is how you can connect to other applications. So if we jump up to the 3 dots next to schedule, this is going to open up a big long list of different items. Now, everything in the lower half of this list, so everything underneath this line, relate to the plans within Microsoft Planner. So for example, I can remove this plan from favorites. I can copy the plan. I can even export the plan out to Microsoft Excel. So let's click this. And what you'll see is it downloads an Excel spreadsheet. And if I click to open, you can see that it basically exports all of that task information out to an Excel spreadsheet. Now for this type of thing, you're probably going to want to do some tidying up of this data, but very simply, you can see things like the plan name. It's got the plan ID and also the date of export. We then have task ID listed here, the task name, the bucket it belongs to, the progress priority assigned to, so on and so forth. So quite a lot of information that you can export out. So that's a nice, useful little feature for those of you who want to do further analysis in Excel. Let's jump back into our options. I can copy a link to the plan, which we talked about earlier. I can jump into plan settings and just review the settings that I have set up for group email. And then finally, I can add my plan to my Outlook calendar. So those are all the options I have in the lower half of this menu. Now, the items in the top half of this menu essentially link out to other parts of Microsoft 365. So for example, if I click on Conversation, it basically opens up my Outlook email and jumps me into an Outlook group that it's created called Simon Says It. And that's a point that's worth noting. When you do create a new plan in Planner, it will be added as a group within your Outlook. And it just means that you can have conversations with the members of your plan and do things like share files, connect your apps, add team sites, things like that. And if I click on Start a Conversation in here, it basically sets up an email going to the members of that plan. So in this case, that would be Adam and Ben. So a nice piece of interaction just there between those applications. The same thing here, if I click on Members, it's going to jump me into my Outlook contacts. And once again, it's going to create a contact group called Simon Says It. And within that group, we have the 3 members of the plan. If I select Files, this jumps me across to a SharePoint site called Simon Says It, where I can do things like upload documents, create team sites, things like that. So I hope you're getting the idea here as to how integrated all of these Microsoft 365 applications are. It's pretty cool that as soon as you create a plan in Planner, it kind of outputs that plan name and its settings and members to all of these different applications ready for you to use. And let's just take a look at the final 2. So this option will basically jump us across to OneNote, where we can create a team notebook, again, with the members of this plan. And then finally, Sites is also going to jump us back into SharePoint. So that's pretty much it. That is a whistle-stop tour of the main features of Microsoft Planner. I hope you found this interesting and you feel a little bit more knowledgeable about how everything works, and are now able to make a better decision as to if Planner is something that you might like to use. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I will see you in the next video tutorial. Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial video on Microsoft OneDrive. Now, if you don't already know, OneDrive is Microsoft's internet-based storage platform. It's offered for free by Microsoft to anyone with a Microsoft account, and it works in pretty much the same way as other cloud storage applications such as iCloud and Google Docs. Now, if you're not familiar with OneDrive, the best way to look at it is that it is essentially a virtual hard drive. So much like you might choose to store your files and documents on your PC, when you put them in the cloud, you're storing them on Microsoft servers instead, which has many benefits. The first benefit is that you can access your files from anywhere. So for example, if you go on a trip without your laptop and need to check a document or maybe edit a spreadsheet, you can easily access your files from your phone or via a web browser. Second, it provides a backup for your files. If you have everything stored on your laptop or PC and your PC dies or maybe you lose your laptop, those files are gone unless you've remembered to back up to an external drive. When your files are stored in the cloud, they can easily be retrieved. And the third benefit is that OneDrive makes it really simple to share and collaborate on files with others. In the past, if you wanted to share a document, you would normally need to email a copy of it to your colleagues and then wait for them to send it back with their changes. With OneDrive, you can share a link to the file and everyone can work on the file at the same time and see updates in real time. And it's definitely worth noting that OneDrive can be accessed on the web and also on your PC. Once you download OneDrive, a folder will be created in File Explorer, allowing you to view and manage your files much like a local folder. Any changes made to files opened from your PC or from the web will synchronize, so everything is always up to date and in step in both locations. So now that we have a better understanding of exactly what OneDrive is, let's take a look at how we can get OneDrive onto our PCs. Now, OneDrive comes pre-installed with Windows 10. If you're using an older version of Windows, you can upgrade to Windows 10 for free and then get OneDrive. However, if you don't want to upgrade to Windows 10, you can download OneDrive onto your computer by going to www.onedrive.com. And it's also worth noting that OneDrive isn't simply for PC users, it can also be installed on a Mac. Now, when you're thinking about using OneDrive as your personal cloud storage, it's worth considering all the different options that you have and definitely checking out the different plans. And there are several plans to choose from, divided down into home plans and also business plans. Now, for the time being, we're just going to stick to the home plans. Now, the first thing you might notice is that there is a free account available. However, this free account only offers 5 gig of storage. Now, if you're somebody who has a lot of files, you might find that you fill up 5 gig fairly quickly. So it might be worth considering upgrading, paying a small fee each month, and obtaining 100 gig of storage. Now, obviously, I'm in the UK, so all of these prices are in UK currency, so I would recommend that you jump onto the OneDrive website for your locale so you can see accurate prices for your region. Aside from those two options, there is also a Microsoft 365 personal account, which works out to about £6 per month. And then if you have lots of family members all using OneDrive, you could choose the Microsoft 365 Family Plan, which works out at about $7.99 a month. And the good thing with these last two subscription packages is that if you buy either of these, you do get access to the online Office apps as well. Now, a final thing that's worth noting is that OneDrive is also available as an app for your mobile phone, so you can edit and work on documents on the go. So just go to the App Store or the Play Store on your device, search for OneDrive and download. So let's take a look at how we get started working with OneDrive. Once you've downloaded OneDrive onto your PC, you'll see a cloud icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the status bar. And as I hover over, it's telling me that currently my files are all up to date. If I click on the cloud icon, it's going to pop up a menu which shows me the last files that have been synchronized, as well as some action buttons running across the bottom. So let's click on Open Folder and see what we get. So this will open File Explorer, where you can see OneDrive and the folders and files stored in the cloud. And this is going to look very much like regular files and folders on your PC, with one small difference. And that is the addition of a status column next to each file and folder. And the status column, as you would imagine, tells you the status of the file or folder. So anything you see with a green circle and a tick, that means that the file is synchronized and up to date on both your PC and in the cloud. If a file has a cloud icon next to it, it means that this file is only stored in the cloud and not on your PC. Now, you can still open files that are only stored in the cloud by double-clicking, but just note what happens. The file actually downloads from the cloud, and then it opens on my PC. And you can see that now the icon has changed to a syncing icon because I have this file open, I'm going to be making changes, and now it's trying to synchronize between my PC and the cloud. So the main point there is that even with files that are just stored in the cloud, you can open them and work on them in the same way. And finally, if you see a file that has a person icon, that means that the file has been shared. And also remember that with any of these files, if you right-click your mouse, you're going to see a contextual menu. Now, most of these menu options are fairly standard when you click on any file in File Explorer. However, with cloud files, you will find this second section contains some additional options. So let's go through each of these and explore what they're all about. So the first one here is Share. So in OneDrive, you can share a link or a copy of a file that's stored in OneDrive with others. And this makes it easy for many people to collaborate on a file at the same time, and also negates the need to send files backwards and forwards as email attachments. So the default here is to send a link to this document. It says anyone with the link can edit, and if I click this area, I can then choose if I want them to be able to edit this file, or if I just want them to be able to view the file, I can remove the tick from this box. Now, if you have a paid subscription to OneDrive, you will see an additional option in here that you don't see with the free versions. And that is the ability to set an expiration date on a link. So what I could do in here is I could set a date of, let's say, next Thursday, whereby this link will expire on this date. So it means that anybody who has access to this file will essentially be thrown out of the file on this particular day and their access removed. And then finally at the bottom, you can choose if you want to add an extra layer of security and set a password on the file. Once you've customized those link settings, it's simply a case of entering in the name or email addresses of the people that you want to share this link with. You can add a message if you want to, and then click the send button. And what this will do is it's going to send an email to Jen, which contains a link directly to this document. She can click on the link, go into the document, make her changes, and I can see those changes in real time if I also have the document open. Now, an alternative to sending a link is to send a copy. Now, if I click on Copy Link, OneDrive is going to create a shareable link, which I can then copy and paste into maybe an email or maybe a messaging application like Teams or Slack. Let's right-click on our file again to go back into our contextual menu. The next option I have is to view my file online. Now, if I select this option, it's going to open this file in a web browser. And you might find that you'll be asked to provide your Microsoft 365 login credentials. Now, the web applications are essentially scaled-down versions of the full desktop applications. You can work on your document as normal, but be aware that some of the more complex or advanced actions might not be available in the web version. So for the most part, I can pretty much do everything I need to in the web version. But if I do need to do something that isn't available in this version, I always have the option to open in the desktop app, where I then have access to the full range of commands. Let's right-click again. And the third option in here is version history. And version history is a great feature of OneDrive. If somebody makes drastic edits to a file or maybe changes something accidentally, you have the ability to roll back to an earlier version. So you can see here that I have two versions of this particular file. If I decide I want to roll back to the older version, if I click on the 3 ellipses, I then have a restore option. The next option in this menu is always keep on this device. So it's worth remembering that accessing files in the cloud relies on an active internet connection. So if you are anticipating being somewhere with no internet, such as maybe on a plane, and you want to be able to work on a file, you can choose to always keep the file on your device. This means the file will be available locally, and any changes you make whilst offline will synchronize with the cloud once an internet connection has been re-established. So if I choose always keep on this device, you'll see it starts to synchronize, it's downloading, and now I have a solid fill green circle. So this indicates to me that this file is now available on my device, and I can open and work on it regardless of if I have an internet connection. Now, the final option I want to talk to you about in here is essentially the exact opposite of what we've just done, and that is the free up space option. Now, as we've already seen, OneDrive syncs to your local drives to make it easier for you to work on files through File Explorer. But that means that the files still take up space on your hard drive. And over time, you might find that your hard drive runs out of space, so you might want to consider freeing up some space by keeping files in the cloud only. So if I click on Free Up Space, again, you'll see the sync icon, and now it changes to a cloud, which tells me that this is now only stored in the cloud, and it's not taking up extra space on my PC. So now let's explore the web version of OneDrive in a little bit more detail, because it's this web version that allows us to access our files elsewhere. So I'm going to click back on the cloud icon, and we're going to say View Online. So this option opens the OneDrive website, which shows everything that I have stored in the cloud. And you will find that the folders and files you see in here pretty much marry up with the folders and files you see in File Explorer. So we have a menu on the left-hand side where I can access my files, and I can just click on these folders to drill down. I can see my recent files, so files that I've recently worked on. I can see all of the photos that I have stored in OneDrive. I can see a list of any files that have been shared by me. And then I also have a link to my recycle bin, which is where any deleted files get stored. Another thing you'll notice at the top of the screen is that we have a really powerful search bar. So if I was to type in something like Excel, it's going to search through all of the files I have stored in OneDrive and pull back any files or folders it finds that matches my keyword. Another thing that's really useful in OneDrive for the web is that you have the ability to create new folders or new documents directly from here. So if we take a look at this menu bar running across the top, the first drop down that we have is New. So I can create a new folder, or I can create a new Word document, Excel workbook, PowerPoint presentation, OneNote notebook. I can create a form or a plain text document. So if I select Word document, it's going to open up in Word for the web, where I can create a new document from scratch. And it's automatically saved into OneDrive for me under the default name of Document 1. And of course, if I want to change this, I can simply click on where it says Document 1, give this file a name and click away, and this will continue to save as I start to type. And what you'll now see is that if I select Recent on the left-hand side, Deb's document is now at the top of that list. Now you can also change the way that you're viewing your files and folders in OneDrive by clicking on the Options menu on the right-hand side. So I'm displaying mine as a compact list, but if I wanted to display them as maybe tiles, I can select that option and get a completely different way of viewing my files and folders. So this is very much personal preference, so just choose the one that suits you. I can also upload documents that I have stored locally directly into OneDrive using the Upload button in that menu bar. I have a choice of files, or I can choose to upload an entire folder. And remember that everything that I upload is going to be synchronized between my PC and the cloud. Now, aside from these main menu options running across the top, you can also perform actions on individual files. So just to keep things consistent, let's carry on using our Dallas utility demo file. You'll see as I hover my mouse over, I get these ellipses in the middle. And if I click, I get to see more actions I can take on this file. So I can open it in Excel Online or even in Excel. I can preview and share it. I can download the file, delete it, move it to another folder or somewhere else. I can rename it and see things like the version history. So plenty of options in there for you to explore as well. Now, something we haven't mentioned yet, which you might have noticed, is that when you download OneDrive, by default, you'll see a folder called the Personal Vault. And the Personal Vault is a special folder to store files in. It offers an added level of security by enforcing two-factor authentication, so it's a really good place to store sensitive or confidential files. Now, if I click on my Personal Vault, it's going to ask me to verify my Microsoft credentials. Once I've verified, I need to essentially approve the sign-in request by downloading the Microsoft Authenticator app. And this is something that's reasonably new with Microsoft. They have an Authenticator app which you can very quickly download onto your phone, and it's basically used to verify your identity. So if the Personal Vault is something that you want to use, I would definitely recommend downloading this app, as it does provide you with instructions on how to progress through and access your Personal Vault. Now, of course, any files or folders that you have stored in OneDrive can also be deleted. So for example, this document 1 at the bottom, I'm going to select it, and I can either click on the ellipses and choose delete from the contextual menu, or alternatively, I can select delete from the menu bar running across the top. Now, when you delete any files or folders, they move into the recycle bin. And you can see there sitting right at the top is the file that I've just deleted. Now, files will be held in the recycle bin for a period of 30 days. So if at any point during that 30 days you decide that you want to retrieve that file, if you just click on the ellipses, you have an option to restore. And that file will restore back to the folder that you deleted it from. Just remember that after that 30-day period, everything that you have in your recycle bin will be permanently deleted from OneDrive. Now, the final thing I want to talk you through is just some of the help and settings, because there's some really important options in here that you need to know about. So let's click on Settings from this menu, and we're going to jump straight to the Settings tab. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these options, but one that I do want to highlight to you is this first option underneath this general group, Start OneDrive automatically when I sign into Windows. So I always like to make sure that I have this ticked to ensure that everything is synced and up to date and I don't forget to start OneDrive. The other important tab in here is the Account tab. So this is where I can come to keep an eye on how much cloud storage I'm using and, if necessary, manage my files. So I'm not using a great deal of my cloud storage at the moment, but if I was, I could click on Manage Storage And OneDrive is basically going to show me how much space I have left, and it's also going to present me with the largest files that I have stored in OneDrive. And as you can see, I do a lot of different videos, and video files are extremely large. So if I was struggling for space, I might come into here, and if I decide that I don't need these files anymore, I can delete them. Another option in here that's quite important is unlink this PC. So at any point in time, you can unlink your PC from your cloud storage. So if you're only interested in storing files in the cloud and you're not particularly interested in having the folder available in File Explorer, you can choose to unlink this PC and everything will just be stored in the cloud. On that same vein, you don't necessarily have to always have all of your folders synchronizing between the PC and the cloud. If I click on Choose Folders, this is where I can come to select folders that I want to synchronize. And you can see just above it says choose what you want to be available in your OneDrive folder. These files will be available on demand. Unselected folders will be hidden from File Explorer. So if you tend to have space issues on your hard drive, you're probably going to want to keep the majority of your files in the cloud only. So you want to come in here and deselect them, because everything that you have selected is going to synchronize to the hard drive on your PC. So it's definitely worth coming in here and checking out what you want to make available on your PC and what you're happy to keep in the cloud. And the final tab here that I want to point out is the Backup tab. Now, if I click on Manage Backup, this is where I can start ad hoc backups of some of my important files. So things like my desktop, documents, and pictures. So don't forget that option is there as well. So that is it. That is a quick overview of OneDrive, how it works, and how you can work with it. I hope you found that useful. I will see you in the next video. I'm going to talk you through what exactly Power Automate is if you're a little bit unsure. I'm then going to show you a couple of examples of the types of workflows or processes that you can automate with Power Automate. I'll show you how you can access Power Automate because you can access it online, and there is also a desktop version of Power Automate that you can download and install on your PC if you would prefer. I'm going to show you the interface, and we're going to take a quick whiz around there so you're familiar. It's quite a straightforward interface, so nothing too scary there. I'm then going to talk you through the different types of flow. So there are a few different types of flow that you can create. Once we've done that and we have an understanding, I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you some of the different ways that you can create different types of flows. So we're going to take a look at creating flows from a template first of all. I'm going to show you how you create an instant flow, an automated flow, and a scheduled flow. And that might mean nothing to you at this stage, but don't worry, it'll all become clear very soon. I'm then going to show you how you can create a flow from scratch and use things like dynamic content fields. And then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to create a document approval flow. Now, I will say there is a lot more to Power Automate than what I'm going to show you today. This is really just an introduction to the application. If you think to yourself, this is something that I'm going to use, then it might be worth having a little bit of a further investigation, or maybe checking out the course that we're putting together and see some of those more advanced features. So with all that said, what is Power Automate? Well, Power Automate helps us automate and streamline our business processes by creating workflows. So an example I might give you of that would be something like a holiday request. Now, I know that a lot of organizations have their own holiday system for requesting holiday. We're going to take it in its most manual, basic workflow. Let's say for a holiday request, the employee wants to request some time off. They send an email to their manager asking for that time off, and then the manager might go away. He might check the calendar to make sure nobody else is away. He might check to see if he's got resources available, and he might have to reassign some of your tasks for the period that you're away. He then decides whether he's going to approve or reject your holiday request. And that might involve him sending an email back to you saying, yep, this is approved, or no, this has been rejected. So that type of workflow would be something that you could automate using Power Automate. And there are so many different types of workflow that you can automate. Let's take a look at another example. The example I'm going to give here is one of a document approval. So again, it might be that you have a sales pitch that needs to go out to the client. But before you send that out to the client, you need a couple of your managers to review it, check it for errors, just check to make sure everything's fine before you can actually send that document out. So this document approval process, again, is something that could be automated using Power Automate. Even something very basic, like maybe you want to post a tweet every time you upload a new video to your YouTube channel. That's something that I do fairly frequently. I upload videos and then I have to manually go to Twitter and say, new video, check it out, post the link. I can automate that entire process as well. Okay, so these are the types of things, and you'll see when we get into it, there are so many different flows that you can automate and so many different applications that you can connect to. So you don't even have to connect to Microsoft applications. You might want to connect to something like Salesforce as part of your flow, or maybe Slack, or maybe some other application like Trello, for example. You can connect to all of these in your workflows. So it's a really powerful application. And if you hadn't had a look at it, we're going to take a look at it right now. Now, when we are creating our workflows, there are a few different types that we can create. And we're going to focus mainly on 3 of them today. There are 5 in total, but we're going to leave the last 2. They're a little bit more advanced. So we're going to take a look at instant workflows. And this is a flow that is triggered by a button click. So it's triggered by the user. So we set up the workflow, and in order for that flow to run, you have to click a button to get that to trigger. The second type of workflow is an automated flow, and this is a flow that's triggered by an event. So maybe that event is the upload of a video to YouTube. Maybe that is the trigger, and then the action is that the tweet will post automatically. Or maybe you upload a file to a folder, and that sends an email. That's an example of an automated workflow. The third type is a scheduled flow, and that is a flow that is triggered by a date and a time. So maybe you want something specific to happen at a specific date and time. So maybe I set up a flow that posts a message in a Teams channel every Friday at 5 p.m. I could set up a flow like that, and it's triggered by a date and a time. So those are the 3 that we're going to look at in the session today. And I have put the last 2 on there, desktop and UI. Those are something I would definitely have a little look at and do a little bit more research about. Or as I said, you can wait for the course that we have coming out. So we're going to focus on those first 3. Now, when you are creating flows, they can be very, very simple, or they can be a lot more complex. And you can set up workflows that use things like logic and conditions and loops and all things like that. So it really depends how complicated you want to get. So with all that said, let's come out of here and let's jump across into, I'm going to switch across to just a browser. Now, we're going to talk about how you access Power Automate first of all, and this is through your Microsoft 365 subscription. So you do have to have a subscription. I do believe now that Power Automate has been made available to even people who have the most basic subscription package. It did only used to be available to business users, but I think they've sorted that out now. So you should have Power Automate if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription. So you're going to need to go to office.com. Log in with your Microsoft credentials. Once you get to this portal, let's click the app launcher, and there we have Power Automate in the list. So let's load it up. And there we go. So this is your hub where everything happens in Power Automate. We have that menu running down the left-hand side with all of the different things that we can do. And then in the middle here, this is kind of our home page, so we can search for videos, things like that, if we want a little bit of help and we want some tutorial videos. Now, the main parts that we're going to concentrate on in this menu on the side, I want to draw your attention first of all to where it says My Flows. Now, this is where every time you create a flow, it's going to log it in here. And you can see that I already have a few different flows listed. So these are ones that I've already set up. So when you create a flow, My Flows is where you're going to find it. Underneath that, we have the Create button. So if you want to create a flow, you can see at the top here, we could start from a blank and we can choose Automated Cloud Flow, Instant, Scheduled, and then we have that Desktop Flow and the Business Process Flow as well. So it really depends what type of flow you want to create. We could also start from a template, and this is going to be the first example that we use. We're going to use a template, and these are basically already set up for you. The connectors are already there between the applications, and it shows you common flows that you might want to create. They're all divided down into different categories. You can see them running across the top, and there are absolutely hundreds of them. For example, let's take a look at this one here. We have a flow that says save Outlook email attachments to your OneDrive. So if that's something you do all the time, every time you receive an email that has attachments, maybe you download that file and then upload it to OneDrive, you could create a flow that does that all for you. That's just one example. There are hundreds. And you can see as we go through all of the different applications that you can use as essentially what we call connectors in Power Automate. On that subject, right underneath templates in that left-hand menu, we have connectors. And this is really where you can see all of the different applications that you can connect to run your flows. And as I said, you're not just limited to Microsoft. We've got Google applications in there. We have things like Slack. We have Salesforce. So many different things. So it makes it a really powerful tool because you can connect to pretty much anything. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to start creating a few different flows. So let's go back to templates. And the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to use a template to create a flow. And we're going to create an instant flow first of all. Now, if you remember from the beginning of this session, an instant flow is a flow that we trigger as the user by clicking on a button. So essentially, this is a manual flow. We have to physically click a button before that flow will run. So let's take a look at these different templates. And I'm actually going to search for one. Now I'm going to use the button category up here. And you'll see all of the different templates that require somebody to click a button. And I think I'm going to narrow this search down a little bit. I'm going to say, let's say I want to click a button to email a note. And there we go. So I now get all of the templates which match exactly what I want to do. And I have this one just here. You'll see that it says instant in the bottom left-hand corner. So I know that this is a manual flow. Click a button to email a note. That's exactly what I want to do. So let's click to select this template. Now what you'll see on this screen is basically it's going to show you the applications that you're going to need to connect to in order for this flow to work correctly. Now you'll see underneath it says this flow will connect to mail. And I have a green tick next to that, and that is exactly what you want. The thing with these is you have to be logged in to every application that the flow needs in order to run. So if we're creating a flow that involves OneDrive, then I would need to make sure that I'm connected to OneDrive, logged into OneDrive with my credentials. And you can see underneath here if you're logged in or not by this green tick. If you're not, then you're going to see something down here that either has like a red cross or it will say fix signing issues, something like that, and you'll be able to sign into that particular application. So make sure that everything down here that you need to connect to has a green tick. That's the first tip. I can see that I just need to be connected to mail, which I am. I'm going to click Create Flow. And this takes me into the details for this flow. So you can see at the top here, the name, it says click a button to email a note. I then have the description. I'm the owner. The status is on, and then I get some information about when this flow was created, modified. The type is instant. I can see the connections that I need to make this flow run, and it's just mail. I'm the owner, and then if I've shared this flow with anyone, I would see that listed underneath here. Now, one really important area of this screen is the 28-day run history. So as you run this flow, you're going to see a log of every time this flow runs. You can go into the flow, you can see whether it was successful or if it failed, where it failed, things like that. Okay, so currently our 28-day run history is empty because we haven't run this flow yet. Now, we have a menu running across the top, horizontal menu, where we have lots of different things that we can do. We have an edit button if we want to edit this flow. We can share it with other people. We can save it. But the most important button here for us is the run button. This is how we run this flow. Remember, this is an instant flow, so it requires us to click the run button for it to run. All right. Now, before we do that, I'm actually going to edit this flow and just change the name because currently it says click a button to email a note. I want to make that a little bit shorter. So I'm going to click the edit button in the top corner. I'm going to change the name of the flow in this pane on the side. And I'm just going to say email a note. I could add a description if I wanted to. I'm not going to. Let's just click on save. So now I've changed that flow name. Now that I've done that, I'm going to run the flow and I'm going to click the run button in that top menu. Now you'll see this pane open on the right hand side. Because this is a manual flow, there's a few different steps I need to go through. So again, it's showing me that I'm signed into mail. I can click continue. And now, because this flow is essentially sending an email, it's sending a note, I need to fill out the email subject and the email body, because this could be different every single time. The thing with flows is once you've created them, you can run them over and over again. So this flow isn't going to necessarily have the same subject and the same body every single time. So it's asking me to input that. Okay, so I'm just going to put in the subject of test, email body, I'm just going to do test. And then we can run the flow. Okay, and this is going to send an email to me. All right. Notice at the bottom here in the 28-day run history, it's now come up with running. All right. Now, if I refresh this, sometimes you have to refresh it in order for it to update. You can see that that flow has run and it says succeeded. So I would expect to get an email come through very shortly with my note in it. And again, sometimes this can be a little bit delayed. There we go. There is that test come through. If I switch across to my Outlook, I can see there is the test at the top. If I go back to my flows, you can see there is that flow we've just created sitting at the top. If I want to run it again, I can simply just click the run button. It's going to open up that same window. I can type in a different subject, a different body, run flow, and it's going to go again. Okay, so that is how you would run a manual flow. Reasonably straightforward. Now, I just want to jump back into this flow that we've just done, but instead of clicking on it, I'm going to click the pencil icon just to edit it, because this takes you in and it shows you the different steps of this flow. And one thing you have to remember is that every flow has a trigger and an action. So here, the flow is manually triggered by me clicking the run button. And if I click on this, you can see exactly what it has in here. It's then going to produce the action, which is to send an email. And it's defining the email fields by using what we call dynamic content. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this a bit later on. Okay, so when I click the run button, it pops open a window that asks me for the email subject and the email body. Once I've input those, it then sends the email according to these pieces of dynamic content. Okay, and the email was going to me in this instance. So that is how you can kind of look at the flow. Another thing you can do if you want to see if that flow has run successfully, if we click on the flow to go back into that details screen, at the bottom here, if I go down to the 28-day run history and click on that flow time, it's going to show me if it was run successfully. So I can see at the top there, it says, yes, it has. And I have 2 green ticks next to both the trigger and the action. If this had failed for some reason, I'd have a cross here and I'd be able to investigate why that flow has failed. Okay, so that is the first example of a flow, an instant flow, and we created it from a template. Let's now move on to talking about automated flows. So these are a little bit different by the way that they are triggered by an event. So they're not necessarily triggered by a button click, they are triggered by some kind of action. So maybe that action is the upload of a file to a specific folder. So the example that we're going to use is I want to receive a notification when a file is uploaded to OneDrive. Okay, so we're going to go into the Create button this time, and we're going to create ourselves an automated cloud flow. So now I go through this little wizard. I can choose my flow name. So I'm just going to say File Upload. And I can now choose my flows trigger. Now I could go through and select it from here. I'm actually going to skip this step because I much prefer to define my triggers and my actions from this page. It's just a little bit easier to see. So you can see underneath, I'm now in my list of triggers. So these are all of the things that can kick off this workflow. I then need to provide an action after the trigger. So the trigger is going to be the upload of a file to OneDrive. So when I'm looking for this particular trigger, I'm going to search for all my OneDrive connectors. And you can see now listed out are all of those different connectors. So I'm going to scroll through and I'm going to say when a file is created. So let's select this one. This is going to be my trigger. So when a file is created in OneDrive, I can then choose the folder. So let's click the folder icon. And it starts out with root. That's like your home directory. Now, if I click the arrow, it's going to show me all of the folders that I have in OneDrive. So I'm going to choose Documents. So my trigger for this flow is when I upload a file to the Documents folder in OneDrive, what do I then want this flow to do? Well, I want this flow to send me a notification. That is the action from the trigger. So I'm going to click New Step underneath and notice now that it's showing me the different actions. I can search for the action that I want, again, using the search bar at the top here. So I want to receive a notification, so I'm going to search for notification. You can see it brings up everything that matches what I've searched for, and I'm going to say, yes, send me an email notification. I can then define what I want in the subject and in the body. So in the subject, I want it to say, let's say, new file uploaded to Documents. In the body, I can have whatever I like. I'm just going to put test in there as this is a training session. I'm happy with that. Let's click on Save. So that is my flow. It's a very simple, straightforward flow. Just two steps, a trigger and an action. Notice that now I've saved this. Just above, it says your flow is ready to go. We recommend that you test it. And if you notice on the right-hand side, I have a flow checker up here. And I would always recommend that when you have built a flow or created one from a template, that you click on flow checker just to make sure you don't have any errors or warnings prior to running your flow. It looks like we're good over here, so I'm going to close this down and I'm going to do a test. So let's click on test. I then get a choice of testing manually or automatically. Now I'm going to test manually and click on test. And what Power Automate is going to do, it takes a few seconds for it to do this, but it's going to start to run that flow in the background. So it's constantly going to be checking to see if a new file has been uploaded to OneDrive. And once it has, then that flow will have run successfully. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump across to my OneDrive and I'm going to access this from File Explorer. And I'm literally just going to copy a file from my Downloads folder into the Documents folder in Personal. Looks like I already have that in there. Let me do a different one. I don't want any problems there. Let's select something else. Select this Kingfisher. I'm going to copy and paste that into the Documents folder. So in a couple of seconds, Power Automate is going to recognize that I've added a new file to that OneDrive folder and the flow is going to run. And you see it's run successfully just there. Okay, so it is pretty quick. I can see that both steps, both the trigger and the action, have been completed successfully because I have a green tick. If I go to My Flows, I can see there is my flow just there, and notice that I now have that Outlook notification telling me that a new file has been uploaded to Documents. And if I switch across to Outlook, you can see there is that particular file. So that is an automated workflow. And remember, with these ones here, automated ones, you don't have to run. Again, if we click on the file, or click on the flow, I should say, the difference between automated flows and instant flows is that automated flows don't have a run button in this menu at the top because they're constantly running in the background, checking for files that have been uploaded and things like that. With a manual or instant workflow, you have a run button because you manually trigger it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let's go back to My Flows. Oh, before we move on to the next one, another thing that's worth noting is if we go back into our automated flow, if you want to turn the flow off, you do have a turn off button just here. So it might be that you want to stop receiving notifications every time a document is uploaded to OneDrive. Maybe that starts to get a bit annoying, particularly if there's a lot of them. You can choose to turn off the workflow to essentially suspend that and then toggle it back on if you want to turn it back on again. Okay, so reasonably straightforward. So we've seen an instant flow, we've seen an automated flow. Let's now take a look at a scheduled flow. So we're going to click on Create, and from here we have a scheduled Cloudflow option. So let's click. Now remember, with scheduled flows, these are flows that are triggered by a date or a time. So the example that we're going to set up here is I want to post a message every Friday at 5 p.m. in the social committee channel wishing everyone a good weekend. So my flow name, let's call this, I'm just going to call it Post a Message in Teams. And then I can specify when I want to run this flow. Now, in order for you to be able to see this, maybe it'd be better if I ran it in a couple of minutes. So let's say I'm going to run this at 6:59 p.m. now. I'm going to set this to run at 7:05 so you can see it in action. So it's going to start today. And let's take a look. Let's scroll through. I'm going to set this to run at, we don't have a 7:05. I'm going to do 7:15. That will be good enough. Now, maybe if this is something that I want to post a message every week, I want it to repeat, not every minute, but every week. And this is a bit strange because it looks like it's selected all of these days. But if I only want it to run, let's say, every Thursday at this time, I need to deselect everything else, which is a little bit strange. So you can see now underneath it says this flow will run on Thursday every week at 7:15 p.m. Let's click on Create. So now you can see when it creates this flow, the first trigger that it's already put in there for you is the recurrence. So this is basically the schedule. So the only step we need to add to this particular flow is what we want it to do at that particular time. And what I want it to do, the action, is I want it to post a message in a channel in Teams that basically says, have a great weekend, everybody, something like that. So what I can do here is I can search for all the connectors that I have from Microsoft Teams, and I can scroll through and take a look at one that matches what I want to do. So I want to post in a channel. And I can see, there we go, post message in a chat or channel. There we go. So I can choose to post as a flow bot. So if you're used to using Teams, when people post a message, in general, it's under their own user credentials. But you can choose to post in Teams as a flow bot, or you can choose to post as yourself. Now I'm going to stick with Flowbot for this example. I can then choose which channel I want to post in, or if I want to post it in a channel or the chat. So I'm going to say post in the channel. I can then choose the team. So I have quite a few different teams set up in my Microsoft Teams. I'm going to choose, let's say, Northwind Traders. And then I can select the channel within the team that I want it to post in. So I have a few different channels in here. Let's select the sales channel. I can then specify the message that I want it to post at Friday at 5 p.m. So I want to just say, hello all, have a great weekend. And of course, I could format that with my formatting toolbar just above and click on Save. So now you can see the flow is ready to go. It says we recommend that you test it. Once again, I would recommend that you click on Flow Checker, make sure that you have no errors and no warnings. And then I'm going to say test. I'm going to test this flow manually. Click on Test. It says it's going to post a message in Teams. I'm happy with that. Run flow. Again, that is going to run, and hopefully we should see very soon a message post in Teams that says, hello all, have a great weekend. Now we might have to wait a few seconds for that, so we will check back at the end and make sure that this has worked. Now I will say it's better if I have Teams open before we go here. Yes, I do. And oh, it actually looks like I do have a message. There we go. It's come through in that sales channel in Microsoft Teams. There we go. It's been posted by the Power Automate bot. Hello all, have a great weekend. And that will post every Friday at the time that you've selected or whatever time reoccurrence you've chosen. Okay, so that is an example of a scheduled flow. So hopefully now you've seen the difference between instant, triggered by a button click of run, automated, triggered by an event, and scheduled is triggered by a time and a date. Let's take a look at another example. We're going to go back to My Flows. This time we're going to create a flow from scratch, and this flow is going to be related to Twitter. So I'm going to say that when a new tweet is posted containing the word Excel, I want to receive an email. So let's create that flow. I'm going to go to Create, and we're going to select Automated Cloud Flow. And I'm just going to call this flow, let's say, Excel tweets, something like that. Again, you can select your trigger from this screen. I prefer to skip over this because I find this screen a little bit easier to see everything. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to find the trigger. And the trigger is going to be the tweet which has the word Excel in it. So let's go to Tweet. And I'm going to say when a new tweet is posted, and click in this field, come on cursor, there we go, that contains the word Excel. And if you're searching for specific keywords in tweets, they have to go in quote marks. So when Power Automate finds a tweet that contains the word Excel, what do I want it to do? Well, I want it to send me an email. So I'm going to click on New Step. And I now need to add my action. So my action is going to be send a mail. So I'm going to take a look through my different options. So it's going to show me things like mail, which is the Windows mail. It's going to show me Outlook options, notification options. I'm just going to say send an Outlook email. And then I can specify who that email needs to go to. So I want the email to come to me. So I'm going to type in my email address. And what do I want that email to say? Now, this is where we can start maybe incorporating dynamic content into the body of our email. So maybe I want the subject to say, when I click in this field, notice that when I click here, I get this dynamic content pane pop open on the right-hand side. So the way to look at these is if you've ever used anything like mail merge fields in Word, they're a little bit similar. So they allow you to pick out pieces of content that are going to be useful to you and incorporate them into your email. So I know that when I receive this email, ideally, I want to see who tweeted or who posted the tweet, maybe the location, maybe the time of the tweet, and what that tweet actually says. So I can get that information by using dynamic content, and it's going to pull through for every single person who tweets about Excel. So in the subject, what should we have in the subject? I'm going to say new tweet by, and then I'm going to use one of my dynamic content fields. So new tweet by, and I'm going to grab the name of the user who has posted the tweet, and I can add that field into the subject. What do I want it to say in the body? Well, maybe I want a little bit more information. So maybe I want to have the, let's say, the location of the tweet. I'm going to use the location piece of dynamic content. Maybe I want to see when the tweet was created. Let's scroll through and take a look at what content that we have here. This one here, created at, which is the time at which that tweet was posted. Hit enter. Maybe I want to see the screen name. So screen name is different from the name of the user. So your screen name is essentially their username. So I'm going to say username. Let's add this one. And then I also want to see the actual tweet. So I'm going to say description. What is that tweet? Let's find tweet text just there. So you can add in these dynamic content fields to really get out of this flow exactly the information you want to see. Let's click on Save. My flow's been saved. Let's click on Flow Checker. I've got no errors and no warnings. And now I'm going to test this flow. I'm going to test it manually. We're going to click on Test. And again, it's going to run in the background. And this might take, again, a couple of seconds because it's going to go away and it's going to start checking Twitter for tweets that contain the word Excel. Now, I can see that it's found one because the flow has come up that it's run successfully. So I would now expect to start getting some email messages through with all of these tweets. And people do tweet about Excel fairly frequently. So I'm probably going to get quite a few come through very shortly. I can see them coming through now. So here we have quite a few. And if we just take a look at one of them, you can see that information that's being picked up by those dynamic fields. So you can see the title contains their username. We've got the location, when it was created, and then we have the description of that tweet. And these are going to carry on coming in. As we know, Excel is a very popular topic to tweet about. This is one of those cases where this can get a little bit annoying after a while, and you might want to just turn that flow off for a little bit. So I'm going to go to my flows. I'm going to go back into this flow and I'm just going to turn that off so we don't keep getting those messages come through. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. We've seen a few different examples there of the different types of flow that we can create. Now, another flow I'm going to show you is one related to document approval. So I talked about this example at the beginning. If you have a document that maybe you need to send to your managers and you need to get their approval, you could create a flow for that particular process as well. So again, the example that I'm going to use here is that every time a file is uploaded to a specific folder in SharePoint, I want to kick off the approval workflow. So let's see how we would do that. Now, I'm going to need to open SharePoint to do this. So I'm going to go back to my app launcher. And I'm going to click on SharePoint. I should have opened that in a new window, shouldn't I? Let's reopen Power Automate in a new tab. There we go. And let's jump back to my flows. Okay, now if you've never used SharePoint before, don't worry too much. I'm going to go to one of the sites that I have, and I'm going to go to my document library. So in SharePoint, you can create things like document libraries to store your documents, a little bit like cloud storage. So this is my document library, and I want this flow to recognize every time I upload a new file to this library, I want it to kick off an approval workflow for that particular document. Now, it might be you have this same thing, but you're using OneDrive or some other file storage system. It doesn't necessarily have to be SharePoint. You might have a folder for approvals, and you want to set it so that every time you upload a document to the approvals folder, it kicks off a workflow. You can set these up however you want to set them up. But I'm just going to do it from my document library. Let's go back to Power Automate and into Create. This is going to be an automated cloud flow because it's an event that triggers it. And this flow name, I'm just going to call this, let's call this document approval. Then I'm going to skip over this and go to my triggers. So what is my trigger here? Well, the trigger is when a file is uploaded or created within SharePoint. So I'm going to search for my SharePoint triggers. I can see the top one there is when a file is created in a folder. So that sounds like what I want. Let's click on it. And there we go. Now I need to provide a little bit of information for this particular trigger. So the first thing I need to provide is the site address. So this is going to be my SharePoint site address. And you can see it knows, because I'm logged into Microsoft 365, it picks up all of my SharePoint sites. So it's this one just here. You just need to select your site, and then I can choose the folder. Now I'm just uploading files to my documents folder, so it's just the shared documents. So every time I upload or create a file in documents in my SharePoint site, what do I want this flow to do? Well, I want the action to be the approval process. Now we do have what we call connectors for the approval process. So I'm going to type in, let's type in approval and see what we get. And you can see down below, start and wait for an approval. So basically, it's going to kick off an approval. It's going to send out emails to whoever I choose as the approvers. It's going to wait for them to either approve or reject the document before that flow will finish. So this is the one that I want. So now I need to select the approval type, and everybody must approve. So if I'm sending this document and I want 2 managers to approve it, both of them must approve the document for this flow to complete successfully. I now can fill out a little bit more information. What is the title for my approval? So what do I want the title to say? Well, I can say new document or approval, something like that. Then I can choose who this approval needs to go to. So I would type in the name of 2 of my managers or whoever needs to approve this document. Now I'm just one person here, so I'm actually going to be the approver as well as the person sending the document. So I'm just going to select myself. Now these 3 are all mandatory fields. You can see they have a red asterisk next to them. The bottom fields aren't. So I'm going to leave those blank for now and just click on Save. There we go. So now I have this flow. I'm going to go to my flow checker to make sure we don't have any errors or any warnings. And now I'm going to test my flow. So let's click on Test. I'm going to manually trigger it again. Let's test it. And to test this, I'm going to need to create a file or upload a file to that folder in SharePoint. So let's go back, and I'm going to create a very quick Word document, which I can do from here. And you should see as soon as I create this document, the workflow process is going to kick off. And you can see already I'm getting requests come through. I'm going to call this doc approval. If I close that down, you can see basically this document has been added to my SharePoint library. It just takes a second to refresh. There we go, docapproval.docx. That is going to kick off that workflow process. If I go across to Teams, you can see I've got a notification here of that approval workflow. I'm also going to get a notification of it in my Outlook. You can see that's just come through there as well. So if I go back to, Outlook, it says new document for approval, and I can choose to approve or reject. So that workflow isn't going to finish until me, as the approver, has either selected approve or reject. So I'm going to approve it. I'm just going to say approved and click on submit. And that is basically going to allow that workflow to complete. And you can see now it's finished. We have a green tick. If we go back to my flows, and I'm going to click the edit button. I'm going to click on the file name, I should say, the flow name. Right down the bottom in the 28-day run history, you can see that that's succeeded. If I want to jump back into it and take a look at the different steps, I can click on it and take a look at the different inputs. Okay, so That is the approval workflow. Now, I've just shown you a few different examples there. Those are reasonably straightforward ones. We've just been using basic connectors, maybe doing a couple of things. They can get a lot more complex. You can, as I said, add things like conditions in. You can add logic. You can add loops into your flows and make some really complex flows. So I think, do I have one down here that is slightly more complex that I can show you? Not sure if I do, but let me just check this one to see if it does anything. Yeah, so this one's got 3 parts to it. So again, this is a Twitter one. So when a new tweet is posted, it sends an email and it also posts a message in a specific channel in Teams. You could have things which have specific logic. So maybe I want to say when a new tweet is posted, if that tweet has more than 5 retweets, I want it to post in a Teams channel. If it has less than 5 retweets, I want it to send me a notification. I could start doing things like that. Now, I'm not going to show you that in this session. That is more advanced as we move into logic, conditions, and loops. But those are the types of ways that you can expand on this basic knowledge. Hopefully that's a nice little introduction for you. It gives you more of an idea as the types of things that you can do with Power Automate. I would recommend you do have a little bit of a dig around in here. Take a look at some of these templates. Take a look at the things you can do. More importantly, think about processes that you complete fairly often and see if you can automate them. Try and test them out, see if that works for you. If you do have a lot of tedious tasks and you do manage to automate them using Power Automate, you'll find it's going to make you a lot more efficient and you don't have to spend time on these tedious tasks. You can focus on the big stuff, the more important stuff. So I'm going to start out by giving you a very brief explanation of exactly what SharePoint is, if you're still just a little bit confused. And I'm going to do that by showing you an example of a SharePoint site. So just a test one that I've created. We'll pull it up and we'll take a look. We'll go through what the interface looks like and the different navigational items on that page. Once we've taken a look at that example site, we're then going to create our own team site from scratch. I'm going to show you how you can do things like add web parts to the home page and something that's super important in SharePoint, and that is working with lists and libraries. I'm going to show you how you can do things like set up alerts so that if something changes on the site, you get a notification. And also, very importantly, how you can export any information that you have within your SharePoint site out to Excel. We're then going to take a look at how we can customize our pages. So how we can do things like add links and customize links, create additional web pages, and also create subsites as well. So quite a lot to cover. Now let's just jump out of our PowerPoint site and I'm going to pull up the SharePoint site that I'm using as my example. And I will say straight off the bat, this isn't very well designed. I haven't spent a great deal of time designing this so it looks particularly nice, but it is functional and you can kind of get an idea as to what SharePoint is all about. So what is SharePoint? Well, it is an application. There is an online version that we're going to be looking at today, and there is also a desktop version. And I will say that at some larger companies, you'll find that they possibly do use the desktop version, but for the most part, it is fairly similar to the online application that we're going to use today. Now, if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, then you will have access to SharePoint. Although I will say that SharePoint isn't available to all subscription packages. So if you have a free account or maybe a personal account, then you're probably going to find that you don't get SharePoint with those. But if you have a business account or maybe an enterprise account, then you will. And just for reference, I'm using a business standard account in Microsoft 365. I'll show you in a moment how you can check if you have SharePoint using the subscription that you have. So that moves us on nicely to how do you access SharePoint? Well, the beauty of SharePoint, because it is online, you can see here I have a site. It's called SharePoint Online Training. And because it's open in a browser, I have a URL which is going to take me directly to this particular site. So what I could do here is copy and paste the link to this site and just put that in an email or maybe post it to a Teams channel so that people can then access the site directly. So that's great if you have an existing site that you want to share, but what if we want to maybe create a site from scratch, or maybe if we just want to have a look at SharePoint, where do we begin from? Well, let me close down this tab for 1 second. So what you see now on the screen is I'm just logged in to my Microsoft 365 account. So go to office.com, type in your email address and your password, and it's going to take you to your start screen, your home page. And this is the hub where you can access all of the different applications within Microsoft 365. And if you have a subscription that has access to SharePoint, you will find it in this big long list of icons running down the side. Alternatively, you can click the app launcher, which is this little series of dots at the top here, to open up the menu, and you can see this is what you're looking for. So if you're curious, if you have access to it, click the app launcher. If you can see SharePoint in there, you are good to go. So let's click on SharePoint. It's going to open SharePoint up in a brand new browser, and sorry, not in a brand new browser, in the same browser, and it's going to take me to my start screen. So what are we looking at just here? Well, this is basically the hub. So every time you create a new SharePoint site, you're going to see it in here because it's more than likely going to be listed under your recent sites list. And you can see here, I have quite a few different sites that I've already created. Notice that you do have asterisks next to these, so you can follow sites. So you can follow your own sites if you want to, and other sites that you've been given access to. So this is a really simple way to quickly jump into any sites that you've created or sites that you're following. So what we're going to do here is we're going to jump back into that site we were just looking at. And it's this one here, the SharePoint online training site. I'm going to click the link and it's going to take me back into that page we were on a moment ago. So what do we want to use SharePoint for? Well, there are lots of different uses for SharePoint. SharePoint essentially allows you to build a site for your team or your department. So it might be that you are working on a specific project and you decide to create a SharePoint site to house all of the content surrounding that project. So we might have documents related to that project. We might have tasks lists. We might have news items and links that we want to post, and we want to keep everything in one place so that the team members who are also working on that project have everything to hand. So SharePoint is essentially a one-stop shop for all of your content. And that's what we're going to do here is we're going to build out a site from scratch. Now, before we do that, a couple of things to draw your attention to. When you create a site, you create a team site, and the team site uses a team site template. And as part of that template, you're going to get many different things. And one of the things that you're going to get is this quick launch menu running down the left-hand side. And you can see here, I have quite a few different items in this quick launch menu. And that is because I've customized it to suit my needs. I've added lots of things into here. You'll see in a moment when we create a brand new site, I don't have half as many things in this quick launch menu. But one of the things you will have as part of the team site template is access to documents. So if I click that, it's going to jump me across to a document library. So I can upload documents in here, I can create new documents and store everything related to this particular site or this particular project in here. Okay, so we have access to documents. What else can we do in SharePoint? Well, I've set up a few other things in here. I have created a training tasks list. So in here, I can see all of the tasks that need to be done on this specific project. I also have access to a team calendar, which is showing me all of my upcoming events. I've created an issues list. So this is just me logging any issues that we're coming across as the project occurs. I've got them all logged down there for everyone to see as well. And I could carry on going. There's lots of different lists, libraries, and items that you can add in to your SharePoint site. You can even add things like team contacts, even discussion boards. So if you want to have maybe a little discussion board, and I think I have one set up in here as well. Here it is, project questions. It's only got one discussion going at the moment, but I could have something like this. So instead of your team exchanging emails to discuss any problems, you can post questions and then people can reply to those topics, much like you would on any kind of regular message board. Now, those are just a few of the things that you can do in SharePoint. We only have an hour. We can't cover absolutely everything. Let's jump back to the home page using our quick launch menu. Now, this homepage is also an interesting topic of conversation because this is where you can display different pieces of content and make them accessible to your users. And the homepage basically consists of numerous different web parts. So you can see on this homepage, I have news, which is going to allow me to post things like news items. I also have a little quick links area over on the right-hand side. So if there's any links that are going to be useful to my team, I can add them into here. So I've got a link back to home. I've got a link to Google. Maybe they're always going to Google. I also have a link to other things within SharePoint. So I have a little marketing team subsite. We've got a link for it there. And I've got a link to a PDF document, the branding guide. So lots of things we can add. Underneath, I've also got that documents library. So we were just looking at documents in the documents area, but what I can do is essentially add a web part and populate it with the documents library so I can display them on this home page. And then underneath that, I have another little area which is showing me all of my recent activity. And this entire homepage can be edited. You have an edit link just here in the top right-hand corner, which we're going to do a bit later on. And you can move web parts around. You can add new web parts. You can really customize what you're displaying on the homepage of your site. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense so far. Let's just briefly jump back to this quick launch menu. Again, this is entirely customizable. If you notice right at the bottom, I have a little edit link just here, which is going to allow me to edit. I can rename these items. I can add other links to other things as well. So lots of things we can customize on this homepage. Now, one thing that you'll notice as we go through is how heavily SharePoint is integrated with other Microsoft applications. So we have things like links out to Outlook in here. We can link to Teams. So when I created this SharePoint team site, what it actually does is it also creates for me a group in Outlook and also a team in Microsoft Teams. So if I click the Teams link in the quick launch menu and just open up my copy of Teams, take a look right at the bottom here. You can see it's automatically created for me a team called SharePoint Online Training, and it's given me a channel, and I can start talking to other team members in here. So everything is very much integrated. So another thing to point out before we get into creating our very first team is that one of the biggest selling points of SharePoint is its permissions. It is a permission-based application. And there are three default groups: owners, members, and visitors. So when you're inviting people to your site or adding new members, you're going to give them one of those three permission levels. And if I click the little cog in the top right-hand corner, so the cog is basically where you're going to find all of your site settings. If I go to site permissions, you can see there, those are the three different groups: site owners, site members, and site visitors. Now, when you create your own SharePoint site, you will automatically be the site owner and you have full control of that site. So you can add things, you can customize, you can delete things, you could even delete the entire site if you wanted to, although I wouldn't recommend it. Now, most people that you add, you're probably going to assign them member permission. So this means they can pretty much do most things. They just can't do things like delete items. And then finally, we have site visitors, and anybody you assign to this permission level will have read-only access to the site. So these are your 3 default permission levels. Okay, so just bear that in mind. You'll see just above there, we have an invite people link. So if I want to add more members to a group, I can simply do that from there. So that is a very kind of quick run through of the interface that we're looking at. And just as a side note, if you ever want to get back to that main start screen and maybe jump into a completely different site, you have another menu all the way over on the left-hand side. And if I click the little home icon, that's going to take me back to that SharePoint start page. I apologize for that police siren in the background. We'll just wait a second until that passes. There we go. I think it's gone now. So this is going to take you back to the SharePoint start page, and I can then dive into maybe another site that I'm following or another one of my own sites. So that's a brief rundown of kind of what you're looking at when you go into SharePoint. So let's start doing some stuff. Let's create our own team site from scratch. Now, I will say when it comes to creating team sites in SharePoint, I've seen different organizations do this in different ways. So a lot of the time at your organization, you'll have a SharePoint administrator. So some real geeky person in the IT department who is responsible for administering all of the SharePoint sites across the organization. And if that is the case, they will normally create a team for you. At other organizations I've worked at, I've seen it where they give permissions to individual teams to create their own like mini intranet team sites for their specific team. So you might have one of those 2 scenarios, but it's always good to know how to create a site. So let's get on and do that. Now, to do this, we need to work from the page that we're on right now. And if you take a look at the top, we have 2 links. We can create a site or we can create a new news post. So we're going to create a brand new site. When we come into the create a site page, we have 2 choices. We can create a team site or we can create a communication site. Now we're going to create a team site. So let's click this big, square just there. The first thing we need to do here is we need to give our site a name. And you can call this whatever you like. Now I'm going to call this Project A. What it will do is it will go away and it will verify that this site name is available. Obviously, if you get a little error message underneath here, it means that you can't use that site name and you need to choose something else. It's going to set up a group email address, a site address, and you can see underneath what that site address is going to look like. So this is basically going to be the direct link to your brand new site. You can add a site description. I'm not going to, just to save a little bit of time. And then you can specify if you want this to be a private site, so only site members can access the site, or public, anyone in the organization can access this site. Now I'm going to keep this as a private site and click on the next button at the bottom. Now at this stage, I can choose if I want to start adding additional owners or additional members. So if I'm working on this project, Project A, maybe I have 5 colleagues that are also working on Project A. I might want to add them at this stage by simply typing in their email addresses into this Add Members area. Now again, I am but one person sitting here doing this, so I don't have any colleagues or any friends. So I'm going to leave this blank and click on Finish. Now, of course, if you choose not to add people at this stage, you can always add them at a later time once you've created your site. So this is what a brand new site looks like out of the box. This is the default settings that you get with the team site template. So this is your bare bones, which we can then go ahead and customize and make it look super fancy. So what you'll notice is that in the quick launch menu on the left-hand side, we have a few items in here. Notice that in the last site that I was using, I had a big long list of stuff because I'd customized it. But these are the bare bones menu items that you get. So you get access to your documents library. Conversations will take you to Outlook. I can go to OneNote from here as well, so I can create a team notebook. I can access my site pages. I don't have any yet, apart from this home page, and a recycle bin, things like that. Okay, so these are the standard menu items. What I could do is if I want to integrate this with Microsoft Teams, you can see underneath it says add real-time chat, and I can choose to add Microsoft Teams. So let's do that. I'm going to say continue, and let's just say add Teams. That's going to take a couple of seconds to do that. And there we go. I think it's done. Yes, there we go. And now it's refreshed, and you can see that now in that quick launch menu, there is my link back to Microsoft Teams. So now that we have this bare bones page, let's start making it a little bit more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to customize this. I'm going to add a logo. So at the top, I have Project A. So this is my team site title. And currently, I just have a default logo. Very boring. I want to make this a little bit more related to what we're doing. So it might be that you have a company logo or a team logo stored off somewhere and you want to add it. So how do we do that? Well, we go into our settings. Now, I mentioned this earlier. All of our settings you will find underneath the cog icon in the top right-hand corner. Let's click, and for this we want to choose this one here, change the look of the page. Let's go in here. What do we have? We can change the theme or we can change the header. Well, let's do both of these. If I click theme, I have different color palettes that I can choose from. So let's change this to something else. I'm going to change this to a purple theme and click on Save. And what you'll also notice is underneath you do have Customize. So if you want to further customize these colors, you can. I'm just going to stick with the default purple theme. And I'm going to dive back into Change the Look. And this time we're going to deal with that header area. So currently, underneath Layout, this header area I'm showing in compact layout. I could choose one of these other three options. If I click on Minimal, it just makes that header area smaller, Standard is a bit bigger, and Extended is even bigger. So I think I'm going to keep that on Standard. I can choose if I want a background to that header. So currently I don't have one, but let's apply a little faded grey background. I can choose if I want the site title to be visible, which I do. And then I can choose if I want to add a site logo. So I'm going to say, yes, I do. Let's click Change. And let me remember where I have these stored. I think they're in there. Project A logo. It's just a PNG image file. I'm going to click Open and then click on Save. So a very minor customization to the branding of the site. So now that I've done that, what else can we do here? Well, I can add news posts, and you'll see on my homepage, I have this news section at the top. So what are news posts? Why would these be useful? Well, this is an intranet site for your team. So aside from adding or giving them access to things like documents that are related to the project, there might also be lots of useful links or news items that you want them to read. So maybe you come across an article that you think might be of interest to your team. You can post that on your SharePoint site. So let me just grab something super random. Let's just go to the BBC News website. And just to show you how to post a link, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the link to BBC News, Control C to copy. Let's go back to our SharePoint site. And then in this news area, I have an add button underneath. If I click the drop down, I'm going to say that I want to add a news link. This opens up a pane on the right-hand side, and all I need to do is Control V to paste that link in. It gives me a preview of the image. If I don't particularly like that, I can change it or switch it out for a different thumbnail image. I can add a different title if I want to, and a description. Now, I'm going to leave all of those on default and just click Post so you can see what that looks like when you add it to your page. And I could carry on going. So if I wanted to add more, I can add another news link for people to browse through. So quite nicely, we're starting to customize this SharePoint site with relevant information. Now that we've done that, let's take a look at something that's very important in SharePoint, and that is talking about lists and libraries. And I'm going to start out with libraries because we have briefly looked at a library already. Now, when I'm talking about libraries, let's jump back into the Documents library. So from our Quick Launch menu, if I click Documents, this is essentially a Documents library. And I don't really have a great deal in there at the moment. What I can do in here is I can upload documents that are relevant to this particular project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some documents into here just to show you how you can add documents into this document library. Running across the top, we have a new button and we have an upload button. So maybe I have a file saved off locally or maybe saved in cloud storage that I want to upload into SharePoint. Well, it's a simple case of clicking the drop down. I can choose to upload a file, a folder, or a template. So I'm going to upload a file. And the file I'm going to upload is this one just here, the employee list. And this is just a regular Excel file. Click on open. It will take a few seconds. You can see I'm getting a notification that it's uploading. And there we have that new document. So super easy to upload files into your document library. I can also create files directly from here as well. If I click the new button, you can see I can create a new folder, a new Word document, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, so on and so forth. So if I want to create a Word document directly from here, so I don't have to leave SharePoint and open up Word, I can just select Word document. It's going to take me into Word Online, and I can now start creating my document. So let's just type in some random text. I'm going to use my little random text trick just to add a few random paragraphs of text in. And because this is Word Online, remember when you're working in the online applications, it saves automatically as you work. So as I start typing things in, if I take a look in the top bar, you can see that it says saved. Now currently my document doesn't have a name, it's just called document. If I click, I can then rename my file. So let's just call this Project A, what shall we call it? Project A stuff, something like that. I click away, that's going to rename that document. And if I close down that window, you'll see in a moment this will refresh and it will change to Project A stuff. There it is just there. Let's add one more document so we have a few in here. So let's just do another Word document. I'm just going to type Hello World in here. And let's call this, I'm going to call this Project B. Click away, wait for it to finish saving, and then when I go back to my document library, it's going to change after a couple of seconds when it refreshes. And there we go. So I now have a few documents in this document library. Now, when I'm looking at libraries, I'm looking at the current view. There are different ways that you can view your libraries in SharePoint. Now, again, if we go to the bar that runs across the top, you can see just here, it's telling me that I'm currently looking at all documents in this library. And if I click that drop down, it's going to show me all of the different views I have set up. Now, I only have one view at the moment, which is the default view of all documents. But what I could do is create my own view. So maybe I want to show different columns. Maybe I want to add different pieces of information and save that as a bespoke view, essentially. So what I'm intending to do here is, because this entire site is related to Project A, on the home page, I only want to display the document library that shows the documents related to Project A. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to modify the columns that I'm seeing in my document library. Currently, I just have the name of the file, I have when it was modified, and who it was modified by. But I actually want to add another column in here, which is going to show me which team owns this document, which project this document is assigned to. So if I click the drop down next to add a column, there's numerous different data types that I can use for my column. Now, what I want is I want the column heading to say project, and then I want the result to be Project A, Project B, Project C, or Project D, depending on which project this document is assigned to. Now, I'm going to restrict what people can enter in here. So I want to define project A, project B, project C, so on and so forth. I don't want them just coming into here and typing whatever they want into the column. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select choice from this data type column. So I can now give my column a name. So I'm going to call the column project. I can add a description if I want to. Now the type for this column is choice. And what I'm going to say is when they want to add the project to the document, they're going to get a menu with a drop down of the choices that I give them. So the first choice is going to be project A. Second choice is going to be B. The third choice is going to be C. I'm going to add another choice. And the fourth choice is going to be D. And I could carry on going if I wanted to. Let's click on Save to save that. And now notice that the column headings have updated and I have my new project column just here. So now if somebody comes in and wants to add the project that these documents are assigned to, all they need to do is click on Edit in Grid View just above. And you can then start assigning the projects to the specific documents. Now that first one is a folder, so I'm not going to bother with that one. This second one I'm going to assign to project A. This one is also going to be project A, and then this one is going to be project B. Once I'm happy with that, I can exit the grid view, and I now have that information listed just there. So now that I have that, what I want to do is I want to create a brand new view that is going to filter for just the documents that are assigned to project A. And then I'm going to pull that through to my home page. So how can we do this? Well, again, let's jump up to this drop down where we have all documents. And in here we have create new view. I'm going to give my view a name. And this one is going to be a view specifically for project A. Let's click on create. So my view has now been created. And if I click the drop down, you can see now I can toggle between all documents and my project A view. Now I'm not done with this view yet because I want this view to only show the documents related to project A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the current view. And I can now set up how I want this view to look. Now, if I wanted to, I can change the columns that I'm displaying. So maybe I decide that I don't need modified and modified by. I just want to know when it was modified. I don't care who modified it. So I'm going to deselect that option. I want to keep project, but maybe I also want to see the file size and maybe the version. I can then scroll down and I can choose if I want to, how I want to sort this information, how I want to sort the documents. So by default, it's going to sort in ascending order. But this is the option that I want. I want to apply a filter. So I want to say, show items only when the following is true. So I want it to show items when, and let's find our column, when the project is equal to A, and click on OK at the bottom. And that is going to apply that filter to this list. You'll also notice the additional column headings that have been added to this view. So now that I have that, I can then use this view on my home page. So if we jump back to the home page, what you'll notice is that because we have our document library displaying, by default, it's going to show all documents. But what I can now do, let's close that down. What I can now do is switch to project A to just display those specific documents so that it's relevant to the people who are looking at this team site. And if I want to make sure that this always defaults to just the documents to project A, I can say set current view as default. So fairly straightforward. You've got your documents library, you can create different views, and you can display those on pages in different ways. Now, something else I might want to do here is I'm not particularly liking how this document library is displaying. It's a little bit squashed up on this home page. So I might want to do some rearranging of the different web parts on this page. So what I can do is I can edit this home page and really customize it and move things around. Right at the top in the corner, we have an edit button. If I click on this edit button, it's going to take me into edit mode. And I can now edit any one of these web parts. So maybe I decide that I want to move this documents library. And you'll notice as I hover over it, I get that double-headed arrow. I can simply click and drag it somewhere else. So I'm going to drag it underneath there. Maybe I want to move the activity over here. So again, I can drag and I can drop and display my activity in a different way. I can even edit these web parts from here as well. So if I click on activity, for example, notice I get this little menu pop out at the side, and one of the options I have is edit web part. If I click it, it opens up, and there's not a great deal I can configure for this one, but I can say or can define how many items I want to show. So 9 is a bit much. Let's just show 3 items and click on close. And once you've made a change to your page, you need to click on republish to set that live. And then everybody in your team can then see the changes that you've made. So now I only have the last 3 pieces of activity showing, and my site just looks a little bit neater. Everything's fitting in a bit nicer. Now, everything on this page can be customized. I've just shown you something really briefly there. So I would recommend you sort of dive in, edit the page, edit the web parts, and see what you can do. But hopefully that gives you an idea as to how that works. Now, we had a look at how we can modify our libraries just there. Now, there are all different kinds of libraries that you can add in to your SharePoint site, not just a document library. If I click the New button at the top here and go down to App, this is going to show me all of the different libraries that I can add in. So you can see at the top here, this is the document library. So if I wanted to add another one, I could. You can have more than one document library. But I also have other libraries in here as well. Now, this area shows lists and libraries. So some of these are lists, some of them are libraries. But if I scroll down, you can see this one here, for example, a picture library. If I wanted just somewhere to store image files instead of documents, I could create an image library in my site. And I could place a link to that in the menu bar, so on and so forth. So Apps is going to show you all of the different libraries you can select. So once again, I recommend you do have a further play around with those things. So now that we've spoken about libraries, let's move on to talking about lists, because this is another really important part of SharePoint. Because pretty much everything that you create in SharePoint is essentially a list. And most of us are used to using lists in some form or another. So for example, if we open up, let's open up the employee list just here. So this is an Excel file, but this is essentially a list. What is a list? A list has column headings running across the top, and then we have records of data. So this is a list, and SharePoint lists work in a very similar way. So what I'm going to do is close this down, go back to my SharePoint site, and SharePoint lists, as I said, they work in the same way. We have our column headings running across the top, and then we have our records of data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a list, and then we're going to display it. Now, there are a few different ways that you can create lists in SharePoint. Now, the first way is I could import a list of information. So, for example, that Excel file that we were just looking at, maybe I think to myself, actually, I'd really like that in my SharePoint site. That's important information for people to know. Well, what I can do is click the New drop down, and right at the top here, I have an option to add a list. And there's a couple of different ways that I can create a list. I can start from a blank, I can import from Excel, or I can use a list that exists already in SharePoint. I also have some super fancy templates down here for different types of lists. So if you remember from the example site, I had a list which showed me or logged all of the current issues with the project. And I created that using this issue tracker list just here. So have a little fiddle around with these. we're going to create a list based on that Excel spreadsheet that we just saw. So we're going to say from Excel, and we're going to upload the file. You can see it's already there because I did this earlier, but just for your benefit, we're going to upload the file, select employee list, click on open, and it's going to show me all of that information. So I can scroll across and take a look at it. Now you'll notice just above each column we have a data type, so SharePoint will do its best to recognize what kind of data you have listed below. So for example, we have things like single line text, and most of this looks pretty good. In the last column here, we have the salary information for these employees, and it's picked up that it's a number. Now, I'm going to display this in a SharePoint site that's accessible by many people. I don't necessarily want them seeing the salary. So what I can do here is, if you don't want to import a specific column, you can just say, do not import. I'm going to say next. I can then give it a name. It's got this very long, complicated and ugly looking name. So let's call this employee list and give it a description if I want. And I can choose if I want to show this list in the site navigation. So do I want this employee list accessible from the quick launch menu over here? It might be that you do, or it might be that you don't. Now I'm going to add it into my site navigation and click on create. And there we go, like magic, it's imported all of that information for me. And if you take a look in the quick launch menu, you can see there is the employee list. Okay, so super simple to import lists in. Now, obviously you can also create your own list. So if we were to go up to, if we go back to home, go to new and create list, I can start from a blank. So if I create a blank list, let's just call this a blank list for want of a better name, click on create. It then gives me a blank list and I can start going in. I can add different columns. So whatever I want this list to show, I can go through and add my columns, and then I can add new items to this list. Okay, so you can do it in a few different ways. Again, this is one of those things that you can have a little play around with. All right, let's go back to our employee list. Now, once again, with this, maybe I want to filter this list or create a different view. This is exactly the same as when we were working in the document library. If we take a look just here, the default view is to show all items in the list. But what if I only want to show the items that are related to the projects department? Well, we would do this in exactly the same way that we applied the filter to the library. So let's do a recap. We're going to go up to all items, and I'm going to say I want to create a new view. My view name is going to be projects. I'm going to click on create. So now I'm in my projects view. I can edit the current view. I can modify the columns if I want to. Now in this case, I'm fairly happy with the columns that I have, but what I do want to do is apply a filter. So this time I'm going to say show items only when the following is true. So when the column is department, I only want to show items that are equal to, and click on OK. And there we go. We now have that filter applied. So I can now toggle between my different views. So you can have all different kinds of views set up to view your lists and your documents in different ways. So now I have that view created. If I go back to the home page, what I could do is I could add it to my home page. How do I do that? I've run out of room. How do I add another web part? Well, this is reasonably straightforward. We need to edit our home page. So we're going to click the edit link at the top here. I'm going to scroll down. And if I want to add something new, if I hover over the bottom in the center, can you see there I get a plus and it says add a new web part in column 1. So let's click it and see what we get. When we add a new web part, we have lots of different content that we can choose from. So I can't only add lists and libraries, I can add things like YouTube videos. So if I want to pull a YouTube video and have it display on the homepage of this site, I can definitely do that. I can add buttons, calls to action, images, links, text, whatever we want. And as I said, we're not going to have time to run through all of this in this session, but just be aware of all of the different content types that you can add. If we scroll down even further, we can add documents, lists, and libraries, which is exactly what we want to do. I want to add my list. So let's click on List. I'm going to scroll down, and intuitively it has worked out what lists I've already added to my site. So I have a blank list and an employee list. Now I want to add the employee list, so all I do is click on employee list and it's going to pull that through. Now by default, it's going to show all items. That's the view it defaults to. So what I want to do here is just switch that to my projects view, and I'm going to say set current view as default so that that doesn't change. I can then republish my page. If I go back to home, I now have that added into the bottom. Okay, so really nice and straightforward. Now, a couple of other things you can do here is you'll see as you add lists and libraries, you can see the menu running across the top. So where we have new, edit and grid view. Now, if this is an intranet site for your team, you don't necessarily want this menu displayed there. You just want it to say employee list and then have all of the records. So once again, you can edit and remove this little toolbar just here. So let's jump back into edit view. Let's scroll down and click on the web part. Remember, you get this little menu pop out to the side, which allows you to edit the web part. And what I can do here is I can say that I want to hide the command bar. And that's going to get rid of that command bar. If we scroll down, she says, I think I have to click apply first of all. I thought that updated automatically, but I think I need to click apply. Let's do that. There we go. It's disappeared. Okay. Now, something else you'll notice is that if I was to add another piece of content underneath, which I'm going to do in a moment, I have this big old space just here. But again, we can change that. We can modify the size of our web parts. So just bear that in mind because I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Let's just close down for the time being, and I'm going to add another web part. And this time we're going to add a YouTube video. So let's click the plus at the bottom and let's select YouTube. Now, to add things like YouTube videos, you need to grab the YouTube link first of all. So I'm going to just jump off to the YouTube and let's go to the Simon Says It YouTube channel. And let's grab, I'm just going to grab one of the first videos we see here. Let's just grab this one. It's probably going to start playing automatically. Let's click pause. And I'm going to just grab the link. So let's just say get a link, copy, and we're going to use that link on our page. So I'm going to paste that in, Control V. That is a very ugly link. I think I've not copied that very well. Just bear with me 1 second. I don't think I'm actually in the YouTube. That's what the problem is. So let's grab, let's say this video just here. I'm going to grab the link from the URL bar this time, Control C. And now if we go back, hopefully this will paste correctly. There we go. That is better. So you know when it's worked because you should see the video populate in the player. Now I'm going to close down that YouTube tab just in case video starts to play. So I'm happy with that. Let's click on Republish. And if we go back to the home page, we can now see that content that we've added. And as I said, I've got a big gap here between my employee list and the YouTube video underneath. So let's get rid of that. I'm going to modify this web part once again. So back into Edit. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click on the employee list and I'm going to select Edit Web Part. And you can see here the size, it says about 15 items. So that's why I have such a big gap, because it's accommodating 15 items. I only have about 5 in there, so I don't really need all that space. So I'm going to say auto size fit to number of items and click on apply. And you can see that that automatically gets rid of all of that blank space in the middle. And there we go. So we've added, or we've seen how to add lists and libraries, YouTube videos. You've seen how to add web parts, to add other different pieces of content to your homepage. A couple of other things before we finish up this lesson, because we have about 10 minutes left. Now, I want to show you the Alert Me feature. And Alert Me is very useful, particularly if you want to be updated on when something changes on your team site. So, for example, if I go back to my Documents library, I'm going to click on Documents in the Quick Launch menu. Maybe I want to be alerted, receive an email notification every time somebody uploads a new document to this library. So it's just going to allow me to keep on top of changes as they're made. What I can do is I can set up an alert on this library. The way that I do that is using our menu running across the top. If I click the 3 dots, you can see I have an option here for Alert Me. And it says alert me when items change. And this is where I can go in and set the parameters for my alerts. So the alert title is just documents. You can change that if you want to. Send alerts to. So this is where you can specify who the alert goes to. So by default, it's going to me as the site owner, but I could also add other people's names in here. I can then choose the delivery message. So how do I want to receive that alert? Now, I'm going to keep mine on email, but I could choose to have a text message if I wanted to. I can choose the alert type, so the change type. So only send me alerts when currently I have all changes. So anytime a change is made to the document library, I'm going to get a notification. Now that might be a bit too much. Maybe I'm only interested to be alerted when new items are added. So I can select that option. Send alerts for these changes. So do I want to be alerted when anything changes or when someone else changes a document? I have a few different options in there. Now I'm going to say alert me if anything changes. And then finally at the bottom, I can specify when to send those alerts. Now, I could send the notification immediately. So if something changes or if a document's uploaded to this library, immediately I'm going to get an email notification in my Outlook letting me know that something's been added to the library. Now, if you have a very busy SharePoint site where people are making modifications all of the time, then that can get a bit overwhelming and possibly a little bit annoying with all of these emails coming in. What is sometimes better is to set up either a daily or a weekly summary. So instead of being notified every day, maybe at the end of the week, so let's say weekly summary, on let's choose on a Friday, maybe just before I go home for the weekend, 5 p.m, I'm going to receive a report that's going to show me all of the changes that have been made, and I can review them all in one go. Let's click on OK to make that change. Okay, so Alert Me is really useful to keep on top of your libraries, your lists, and your site in general. Couple of other things before we finish up. Something else you can do. You will find that you have in your lists and libraries, you have an export to Excel option in that top navigation menu. So if you have lists that you have or that you've created in SharePoint and you want to just export them out to Excel so that you then have Excel's full functionality. Maybe you want to do some calculations, maybe you want to create a pivot table or a chart. You can very simply export any list or library out to Excel by simply clicking the button above. Now, I just want to finish off. We've got about 6 minutes left. I want to show you how to customize a couple of other things. Let's go back to the home page. Now, one thing you'll notice is with these navigation menus, this quick launch menu on the left-hand side, you'll see right at the bottom, I have an edit link and I can customize, or I can change and modify these menu items. So for example, if I want to move the employee list up, I can do that by clicking the three dots, and I can move it up to reorder. If I want to delete something, so if I want to delete the blank list, I can remove it from the menu. I can even make items sublinks of other items in the list. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. If you want to maybe rename or change the name of any of these, if you click on Edit, it's going to open up this little box, and you can change this to something else. So I'm going to call this, let's just rename it, I don't know, marketing, something like that, and click on OK. All right, so super simple. Don't forget to save at the bottom. Now, something else you might want to do is in this quick links area at the top here, you might want to add in some links that are helpful to your team. So this would be more links to things like external sites or documents of importance that everybody accesses, universal links. So maybe everybody needs to access the Pexels website for images, or the Noun Project website for icons, or the Microsoft site for training, something like that. You can add quick links in here and display them on the homepage. Again, this is a case of simply editing that homepage by clicking the editing link and selecting the Add Links button. And there's all different kinds of things I can add. I can add things that already exist in my SharePoint sites. I can add stock images. I can add files from OneDrive. I can upload, or I can add from a link. So I'm going to add a couple of things in here, and I've already got these browsers open at the top. I'm going to add a link to the pexels.com website, which is a great resource for free images. We're going to paste that in, and we're going to click Insert to add that link. And you can see up here, it's now listed free stock photos, Pexels. And if I want to make that a bit shorter, I can modify it, or I can change it to just say Pexels over here. Okay, so very simple and straightforward. I can go in and I can add more links in exactly the same way, simply by clicking that Add Links button. And if I want to remove links, for example, this Learn About a Team site and Learn How to Add a Page, whilst they are quite helpful, I don't really need them. I can click on them and just select Remove to get rid of them. Once I've added my links, republish the page. And there we go. I now have my quick links at the top here. And of course, you can add more than what I've done just here. Okay, so everything is nice and customizable. Now, the final couple of things. Now, aside from this homepage, now it's worth noting that this homepage is the terminology that they use within SharePoint for this style of page is a wiki page. And basically what that means, it's a page that brings together lots of different pieces of content. So we have lots of different web parts pulling through different lists, libraries, and other pieces of content. Now, if I want to create another page, so another sort of intranet page, then I can definitely do that as well. So up to the New button, we have Page. And I can choose a template to select from. Now, we only have 3, or I can create one from a blank. So let's just do blank and click on Create Page. And this is going to give me a brand new page that I can add content to. You can see I can edit the web part. I can change the image in the background. I can add text. I can do whatever I like and create my own page. So let's call this, what shall we call this? I can never think of good names. I'm just going to call it test page. There we go. Of course, I can make this a lot more interesting than it is now by simply adding different web parts, different pieces of information. And when I'm happy, I can click the Publish button at the top to create that brand new page. Now, notice that this test page hasn't been added to the quick launch menu. So if I'm on the home page, how do I get to that page? Well, if I click on the Pages link just here, this is going to show me all of the pages that I've created. So we have the home page, we have the BBC News page, because if you add a news item, that's going to create that as a new web page. And there I have my test page. And if I want to add this to the quick launch menu, all I need to do is click the three dots. And we have a, where has it gone? Where has it gone? Oh, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong page. It's up on this top menu, Add to Navigation. It's thinking, and in a moment, we should see that test page appear in our quick launch menu. And sometimes you have to wait for a few seconds for these pages to refresh, or you can manually refresh them. So I'm going to do that just to hurry it up a little bit. And you can see there is my test page. Now I want this to appear underneath my pages. I want it to be a sublink of pages. So once again, I can edit the quick launch menu and I can move it up. So let's move it up so that it's underneath pages like that. And I want to make it a sublink. And what that will do is it will just indent it very slightly. So I have a little bit more structure and organization going on in this menu. Okay, so you can go in and you can add as many pages as you like, display different things on them, and add them to the menu. And the final thing, just before we finish up, because it is 7:30, you can create subsites. Now, what is a subsite? Well, you might have, let's say, instead of this being project A, maybe this is a page for the sales team. And within the sales team, we have different smaller teams. So you have the credit controllers, the accountants, the finance admin people. What you could do is create a site for finance and then create subsites for the different teams within finance. Okay. And of course, you can display links to those subsites on this homepage so it's easy for people to get to. So how do we create a subsite? Well, you'll notice that if we click New, there isn't an option in here to create a new subsite. We need to do it from a different part of SharePoint. We need to do it from Site Contents. So in that Quick Launch menu, let's click Site Contents. Now, what this shows is basically everything that you have in your SharePoint site. And what you'll notice is at the top here, we have a link to subsites. Now, because I don't have a subsite, there's nothing listed just here, but I can click the New button and create myself a brand new subsite. So let's just use that example. This subsite is going to be for all of the accountants. I need to give it a website address, so I'm going to call it Accountants. It's going to be a team site. I'm going to use the same permissions as the parent site, and then I can specify if I want to add this into the navigation. So I'm going to say yes to display in Quick Launch and click on Create. And again, this can just take a couple of seconds. But what you now basically have is a brand new subsite. So we have a different menu that we can customize, and we have that bare bones template, and we can start designing this however we want to design it. Okay, so super nice and simple. I think that is it, guys. We are at 7:30. That is pretty much everything that I wanted to cover with you. I know it's a lot to take in and it's a bit all over the place, but I really want to just showcase some of the different features and things that you can do with SharePoint. Now, of course, there is so much more that you can do. You can add all different kinds of content, all different kinds of libraries. You can add discussion boards, message boards, blog archives, blog posts. You can even set up things like workflows. So approval workflows or sign-off workflows, things like that, to really kind of pull everything together.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To get 4 free courses in Excel, QuickBooks, Microsoft Project, and Photoshop, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.